Okay, local recordings have been enabled.
As local recordings are wont to be.
Yes. I wonder... All right. I think there are a couple of people here. So, hello, YouTube.
There's at least 3 of me.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
It's a lot of me.
That's my worst nightmare. Damn it, wake up.
It's a whole lot of me.
All right. Oh,
yeah?
the sound all right? Like if I...
Yes, you are on the correct.
Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing it.
Yes, please stop banging the correct microphone.
Yes.
Is this on?
All right. It's October 6th, 2024, and welcome to episode 280 of the Retrocomputing Roundtable. The RCR is a podcast about retro computer news, nostalgia, collecting, fevers, and dot matrix, I suppose. Could be.
Sure.
I'm Paul Hagstrom, near Boston. I am joined today by 2 retro computing enthusiasts. Quinn Dunkey in the woods of British Columbia. How are you?
Hello, I'm excellent. It's a beautiful fall day here. I love this time of year. There's a crisp in the air, and the grass has stopped growing, and the snow hasn't fallen, so there's no chores, and it's lovely.
And do you live in a land of evergreens? Because here it's just leaves everywhere.
Okay, fair point. I do have one big maple tree in my front yard that it's a late dropper, but at some point in the next month, it's just going to go thump, and I will have 6 metric tons of leaves to rake, but I only have to do it once, so that's not so bad. But yeah, it's like 99% evergreens around here, so.
Excellent.
Yeah, it is the woods right there in my description.
Also joining us is Carrington Vanston from Toronto. How are you?
I'm excellent. I also will not rake leaves this week. I will show them.
Your condo
In my
in the sky doesn't get a lot of leaves outside.
If they get this high, I agree to rake.
You've got bigger problems
Yes,
then.
the apocalypse has come. When you started the show, Paul, it sounded like you said the Retro Computing Roundtable, and I was like, yeah, I like it.
I wonder what I actually said. It's always, you know, one thing I also have never figured out is how to stress roundtable. So is it a round table or is it a round table? And so I always just split the difference, and it never sounds natural.
It's roundable.
Able, yeah, it's roundable.
It's roundable. It's quite roundable.
My takeaway is that there's apparently a way to win this show, so I am going to.
Okay.
I am going to win. I don't know what the rules are yet, but as soon as I figure them out, stand back.
Points.
Yes, I have a very unpleasant competitive streak. It's not an attractive quality. I'm no fun at board game night. Nobody leaves, my friend.
Yeah. All right. So what we've been doing over the past, several episodes is to sort of track the year with our episode number and talk about the year that sort of corresponds. We're on episode 280, and so that would correspond to 1980. The trinity of computers is out there. People are writing software for it, or for them. Some are being replaced. But so yeah, I guess we can start in on this. We have a lot of things that are. We have various experts among the potential roundtablers who are not here. And so that's pretty excellent.
Well, I think we can all agree that 1980 is the year when probably the most powerful of the 1980s computers came out, the VIC-20.
That's right.
An absolute powerhouse with no restrictions or limitations whatsoever. A glorious machine.
Oh, it was terrible when it came out. I mean,
Right.
and then it was never. It didn't get better. Weirdly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, no disrespect. I mean, I know some people that had it because it was honestly what they could afford. It was a very, very reasonably priced machine. So if you could,
it was something like $300 or something, or like for $250.
Yeah.
Which is great. You compare that to like the Apple II or whatever. Like that's a crazy good price.
Yeah, I knew people that bought it after the Commodore 64 was out because it was like the one they could afford. And I mean, it did some stuff like you could play Omega Race on it, and it had some decent games. And
Omega Race.
yeah, it did stuff. It had
Yeah,
a
it had all
cartridge
these
port,
cartridges.
which was a big deal. Like for a low-end machine, a cartridge port is a massive win because it means you can play decent games with no need to buy an expensive disk drive and that kind of thing. That was one thing that Commodore got right, I think.
And the Coco came out the same year, also with a cartridge. The Coco is the one that I had of the 1980s computers. I eventually got a Coco, which I quite liked. I have often commented that it looks like it weighs 50 pounds, and it actually weighs -2 pounds. Like it just will float away if you take your hands off it. It just floats away into the sky. Crazy, crazy light.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the platforms that I have yet to really dive into. I think I have the full set, like from 1, 2, and 3, but that's on the to-do pile. Always has been.
I had a Model 1 and I had the original Coco, but that's all I had when it comes to TRS-80 computers, or Trash 80, as the kids in my high school would call it.
Right.
Because they were cool.
Yeah, and back on the VIC-20, that one, my only experience with the VIC-20 was in, whatever it is, Kmart or something, like one of these stores. Like it made it into the sort of like standard retail, and so like I would sit there and, I would type my little like 10 print 20 go to program. Not usually.
WizKid.
Yeah, right. Well, either that or
That's all it took back then.
Not.
Kid, you're hired.
Right.
Yeah, one thing Commodore really excelled at was distribution, and so their machines were extremely visible. Like every Kmart, every Sears, like they had a display, they had a kiosk. So I mean, we were all exposed to them, even if we weren't going to buy them necessarily.
Yeah.
But they certainly got that part right. Canadian Tire for the Canucks. Canadian Tire was a Commodore distributor, so I'd go to Canadian Tire to look at the Commodore stuff.
I'd look at the tires.
Yeah.
Right.
I would not look at the tires.
No. They do still sell tires.
Oddly.
Yeah, weirdly. It's like one of...
And Canadians.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we don't talk about that part of the store. That's... Oof.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was strange to see, a Canadian Tire in like the basement level of a mall. It's like, well, do you really go here? I mean, like this is before I understood what Canadian Tire was.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just an auto shop. Yeah.
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 Yeah, there's the VIC-20 also has I do remember this too. It was known as, well, okay, so it's the Wikipedia tells us that it was known as the VIC-1001 in Japan. I don't know why that is, but it was also known as the VC-20 in Germany because apparently Vic is some kind of like taboo word.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Interesting. I did not know that either.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Also, fun fact that all the Commodore stuff was aggressively sold in Japan before it made it to other countries outside of North America, because Tramiel had a real thing about Japan. He was extremely bitter that he had been undercut in the calculator market prior to the computer revolution by the Japanese.
right.
And so he devoted his entire career to trying to like beat Japan in electronics. And so everything he made, he tried to undercut them. And that's why he was so aggressive about keeping things inexpensive. I mean, he talked a big game about making, computers for the classes or the masses and not the classes or whatever, but it was actually all about beating Japan because he was still mad about that.
Yeah.
And the VIC-20 was the one that was William Shatner did the commercials, right?
That's right.
How do you not get the Star Trek computer? Like, come
Yeah.
on.
And
That 22 column display though was such a deal killer. Like it was that was really what made it useless for anything except playing the occasional cartridge game and writing 10 print hello. Like that screen was just brutal.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, because I think I probably knew the Apple II before I saw the VIC-20 in the in the stores, and so like the speed with which you get to the end of the line is just frightening.
Yeah, I mean the standard was already way better than that. It was already at least 40 columns, some were 32, but I mean it was already much better than that in every other computer, even at that price point. So that incredibly low res text screen was quite a quite a boat anchor on the potential success of this thing. But again, for the price, I mean, if all you wanted to do was play games on it, which, let's be honest, is what 90% of people did with them, it was an option.
Let's see. Also, in 1980, I didn't realize this, it was the ZX80. So,
I did not know this either.
I guess the one we're familiar with is the slightly later ZX81 and Timex Sinclair 1000.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always wanted to get one of these because they look cool. But they're very cheap plastic, and they turn yellow and they crack, and it's very hard to find like a nice one. So
yeah, Sinclair was very good at making stuff look cool. There's no, like, from 10 feet away, kind of. Like, there was no question about that. They had a design sense. I mean, the one that always fascinated me was the Sinclair QL. Is a very, very cool looking machine. But again, once you drill into the details, it's a terrible, terrible machine. But it did look cool.
yeah.
In Canada, we had the ZX81, but as a kid, I had what I think of as a ZX80 because it was white and had that really, really flat keyboard, like flatter than the 81. But it wasn't, because that wasn't in Canada. So I think my dad came home one time with like an 81 knockoff or something. And I've never been able to find what that is. Like, what was the computer in Canada that looked like this, but wasn't this? Paul, do you have 4 of those?
That's really weird. I have none of neither this Canadian edition or the the actual ZX80. I'm wondering. I'm still mildly skeptical of your memory.
Oh, as one should be. My memory is terrible. Like, I may have already told the story 3 times on the show. I don't know. But it was something that was
three
like
times
this.
in this show.
My memory is this white. I've tried to look through old photos and things, but I can't find it. But it was a little thing like this, and it was. My memory is it was white, but it could also be that we had an 81, and then later I saw pictures of the 80, and then now remember it as being a white thing. Like, I don't know.
I never saw anything that looked like the ZX80.
But I had some kit stuff. I had what I thought was a Heathkit computer, and only later years, only a couple of years ago, realized wasn't a Heathkit thing. It's just at the time, I guess I said any kit computer, I called it Heathkit because it had the word kit in it. I didn't really realize Heath was a brand, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But I had something. I had a computer. I had a computer once.
Do you remember in Canada, was the ZX81, was it the ZX81 or was it the Timex Sinclair?
No, I think it was the Timex Sinclair in Canada.
Yeah, okay. Because, I had a friend who had one of those, but I couldn't remember. I felt like it was the Timex Sinclair that it was called, but yeah.
I think
I think
mostly
that was
just a difference in the badge.
That was black, though.
Yeah, it was black. Yeah.
It did have a membrane keyboard, but I remember the thing I had being like super flat on the keyboard, like the 80 was.
I mean, the Timex Sinclair was pretty flat. It wasn't, I guess, this flat. I don't know. I've never seen a picture of the ZX80 from the side. How thin is it? Is it as thin as it appears? I don't know.
That is a good question.
Yeah, because it could be raised up. It could be. I did almost nothing with it. I remember I had it for a summer, and I programmed a couple little things in it. It was like it may have been a calculator. I don't know. I wasn't a smart kid. My dad could have told me this was a computer. I'm like, okay, there goes 2 months.
Yeah, I think just to, correct pedantically something that I said, the Timex Sinclair is a little bit better, I think, than the original ZX80, but it looked the same, so.
Because of the Canadianness.
Yeah.
Well, it was the same as the ZX81, right?
I think of it
yes,
as
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
I think it was the same
pedantically,
machine. It was just rebadged because, so the Timex Sinclair in Canada was the ZX81. It was the same machine, just rebadged because Timex was the distributor in Canada. At least that's what I recall.
Yeah, and the thing I was trying to correct myself on is I think it had slightly more memory than the ZX81 did.
Because it was metric.
But then I messed something else up, and so it was just all a wash.
We use metric binary up here. It's
that's right. Yeah.
like regular binary, but with maple. Kyle in the chat knows what he's talking about. The I am Canadian. I get that. Paul,
Yeah,
Paul might not get that, but
I
get
also
that.
got that reference.
And I did not. So
Yeah.
everything is perfect. Everything worked out.
I am Canadian.
Gate secured. You don't get our jokes. Go away.
Right.
Hey.
Yeah. Also, somewhere in the like as we were discussing this, Buried Bits in the chat mentioned that the FujiNet will make many of these machines have a new life as they begin to be able to connect to networks. I don't know that there's a FujiNet for the ZX80, but nevertheless, many of these machines are. The project is to try to connect as many as possible to the FujiNet.
So a little bit of live Googling reveals that there were a bunch of clones of the ZX80, some of which may have been available in Canada.
Aha.
So you may have had one of those. There was something called the Micro Ace. There was in Australia, they had a Dick Smith clone of the ZX80. So there are some things that you could have had. I don't know how I think the Micro Ace was distributed by Timex, so it is possible that you had that. It is black in color, but it does have the extremely thin keyboard.
There's almost nothing that screams clone more than this picture of the Micro Ace.
Yeah, it's a pretty sad looking thing. But I think it was technically possible that Carrington had that. So
Oh yeah.
maybe he's not a liar.
Maybe.
It's conceivable.
It proves nothing. Look at that switch on the side. Holy moly.
Yeah, it's like right out of page 6 in the Radio Shack catalog, that switch.
Yeah.
Nice. I have a whole appreciation for that kind of thing now that back then I would have poo-pooed and thought terrible. Now I look at it and go like, oh, that's cool. I don't know.
Yeah. I think another comment that we got in the chat was that there was a gray version of the Timex, or gray or silver version, but I think that actually the chat also followed up on that to say that was the 1500. This guy. So there was this.
I don't think I know that one. The Sinclair 1500.
Is that the one I have? I have a 2068 here, but the
Yeah,
1500 is. Yeah.
I was just looking at that too. I'm on the same page Paul is, and there's a bunch of Timex Sinclairs. I only knew about the one.
I only knew about the one as well.
The first one I thought was the only one.
Yeah, I think we've had the 1500 has shown up a couple times, I think, in eBay auctions, but it's I think it's like a 1000 plus. Basically, it's like a little bit better. I wonder if I can.
Oh, I also knew, so I knew about the Sinclair, and then also the one with the cassette built in, the 128 or something. I think I knew about that Sinclair as well, but that's all the Sinclairness I have.
Yeah, I was gonna try to, hold up and wave up the 2068 that I have
3 or 4
but
yours.
the problem is it's plugged into stuff, and I don't want to mess with it. But I just trust me.
Barry Bits in the chat says the 1500 looks like a 3D printed Sinclair. It does.
Yeah. Okay, now I've gotten lost. What else happened in 1980?
I was there.
Yeah.
So that go for me.
Honestly, I was going to say something along those lines, which is that I feel like 1980, 81 are kind of the years when people were just becoming aware of stuff. At least that's how it felt. Like a lot of this stuff was invented earlier than you think. Like the Atari 800 came out in 79 or whatever. But then nobody really talked about it until 80, 81, 82. So I feel like there was just sort of the market was building, exposure was building. People were starting to acquire the stuff. Like it was a bit of a slow burn, I think, for the first 3-4 years of the so-called computer revolution.
Yeah. It's definitely true for me. I didn't know any of this stuff prior to then.
It took a while for news to get around of this stuff. Like we had to send telegrams and ride horses, and
That's right.
wasn't easy.
Let's see. So another thing that I put in here was the HP 85 as something that came out in 1980.
Yeah, this thing is fascinating. I love this thing.
So it's I guess it's some sort of mixture of computer and calculator and
yeah, it was
grocery store checkout.
Yeah, it does. It looks like a checkout terminal, point of sale terminal. Yeah, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it has what looks like a full computer keyboard, and then a teeny little CRT above that, and then kind of a flat console keyboard, a console calculator form factor. HP was pretty convinced that they could evolve a calculator into a computer, and they tried very hard to do it step by step like this and just sort of bring their market with them, because they had a huge footprint in calculators, but they weren't a computer company. And so they wanted to just kind of bring their user base with them into this new market. But it turns out you can't do that. It's like trying to like breed horses until you get a car. It just doesn't happen no matter how many horses you breed. And so
Quinn says from experience.
Yeah, believe me, I've watched some horses doing things, and you never get a Model T. You never even get close to a Model T. Like, I'd settle for one of those Mercedes-Benz three-wheelers, but no,
Just another horse.
just more horses. Some of them have, 3 eyes. You keep at it, but no cars. So that's what this thing is. It's the 3-eyed horse of the calculator world.
When you look at the form factor, it's got like a little printer built in, but it's almost like a register printer. And you think it's like they shrunk down the monitor to make room for that really important 2-inch wide printer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and capability-wise, it's sort of in the ballpark of like an HP 48 or a Cassette. What is it? A Timex? What are those calculators that kids all have to buy for school? I forget what they're called. You know what I mean? The TI-85. That's it. TI.
Yeah.
They're kind of in that ballpark, in that they're basically just a calculator, but you can program them a little bit, and they have some. It has some other sort of computer adjacent things, but it's not a computer. Like it's never going to be. It's just a very big, elaborate calculator.
You're going to make it cry.
Yeah. Oh, it knows what it did.
To your horse.
Yeah, exactly. The vet bills. Oof.
There are a couple of like lists of things that happened in 1980, and another thing that happened in 1980, and I don't actually know how much I believe that this is important, but the Intel 8087 came out, and that was like, in my mind, I think of that as a thing, because it's sort of like, this is the math coprocessor that you put on.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, I don't even know what this is. I know an 8086. What the heck's an 8087?
Yeah, so like if you wanted to sort of boost the power of your 8086 or boost the speed of mathy stuff, you could get this. So I guess this was also something with the Macs too. Maybe it was, I can't remember if it was with the SC30 or the SE, but you could get like a 68881 or something like that.
Like there was the Macintosh 2CX and the 2CI, and really the difference between the two was the coprocessor.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a period there where the CPUs all had a floating point second chip that you could attach to it. Yeah, Intel did that. I think right up to the Pentiums. I think there was a compatible floating point unit that just had a 7 on the end. I think with the Pentium, I think was when they started just integrating it.
So I wonder if that was just because not everybody needed this, and it was much cheaper not to include that.
Yeah, probably. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, floating point was not very necessary really until 3D became important and other more math-intensive things. Like, you really only needed aggressive floating point performance if you were doing scientific data analysis or whatever. But yeah, for running operating systems and word processing in games, you didn't need floating point really. Nobody was using it anyway.
Yeah. Christopher in the chat says that the PC transporter had a socket for the 8087 as well. A PC transporter is it's like a card that you can plug into an Apple II that has like an IBM PC on it.
Yeah. Was it available for the 2? I had only seen it for the GS. Was it also for the regular Apple II?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's quite possible that the regular Apple II would be a bit underpowered for it, but at the same time, I'm not sure. Like, I think that at that point the Apple II is just providing peripherals.
Yeah. The PC transporter's integration is pretty good as far as, so I have played with the GS one, and Christopher says it does work on the 2 Plus and 2E as well. So I have played with it on the GS. The integration is better than you'd think. Like, it does use the keyboard and the display and the power supply. It can't use the floppy disk because, of course, it's MFM versus GCM, so it has to have its own floppy drive attached to it. But otherwise, it's pretty seamless. A friend of mine had one in his GS, and I did see him play Ultima 6 in CGA on it. Its main disadvantage was that it's just a very terrible PC, and it's a CGA XT with not a lot of RAM, and there doesn't turn out to be very much you can do with an XT and CGA and no RAM. So it's for if you had some files in DOS or whatever that you really needed to bring over. I suppose it might run WordStar or something, but it wasn't. It wasn't much of a PC. But it's weird that it had an 8087 socket in it. I can't imagine anyone used that.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably unbearably slow anyway. So maybe this helped a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it ran Ultima 6 okay. The main issue was that it was CGA only, so you couldn't, because of course it didn't have any slots on it, so you couldn't put a better graphics card on your card. You couldn't have graphics cardception on it. And so it just, the games on it were just unintelligible blurs of pink and teal and, black, because that's what CGA was.
I like how Quinn can rate like any old computer based on how it does various Ultima games.
Yeah, that's my scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it Ultima? That's my scale.
Curtis in the chat pointed out that the TRS-80 pocket computer was also a 1980 thing that hadn't made it into my list, but those are kind of cool. I guess back on the theme of calculators as computers.
Yeah, I had one of these, and I absolutely loved it, actually. I had the Tandy PC4, the one that's pictured in the middle of your screen right now. Mm-hmm. I had that one, and I loved that thing. Like, it was surprisingly fun to write little basic programs on it for the little one-line display. It was, for some reason, a lot more capable than you would expect, I guess. I don't know. There was something about it that it was very fun, satisfying to program on. I think what it was at the time, it was the only way you could have mobile computing, I guess, because I would bring this thing on family road trips and stuff. And so it was a way to program on the go at a time when there was no other way to do that. So I guess that's why it was fun, because it existed. But I really love that thing. I don't know what happened to mine.
Yeah, I had a Casio 720, 730p, FX 730p that I used for the same sort of thing. It was for family vacations, when you couldn't bring your Apple II.
Yeah.
And you did not want to participate with the families.
No, that's activities. Worse than death. No, I want to talk to my family. Instead, I want to write a blackjack game on this one-line display, which is what I spent a memorable summer on the road doing. It also, the PC4 had a little, you can see it in the photo that you were looking at, that little black strip at the top is actually a plastic cover over an expansion slot. So it had a weird little expansion slot that you could plug into a cassette interface, which was substantially larger than the machine. The cassette interface was about 3 times the size of the actual computer, but then that allowed you, similar to that, but it was even bigger than that. But it allowed you to plug it into a cassette deck, and you could save and load programs. And it actually worked pretty decent. The only thing was it required a cassette deck with a remote port, which wasn't super common. Cassette decks had a line in and a line out usually, but not necessarily the remote port, which was a third mini, 1/8-inch audio jack that I don't know what the standard or the protocol on that jack was, but it was some sort of standard that some cassette decks had that allowed the computer to start and stop the recording by itself. Yeah. And it did require that. So it was hard to find a cassette deck that supported it.
Yeah. I think that like microphones that you used to get for the cassette players would sometimes have an on-off switch, and that specifically also ran the remote.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, I figured it wasn't a standard invented for computers. It wasn't something you saw a lot. Like, we had various ghetto blasters and tape decks and stuff, and I had never seen this remote port before until I only ever saw one tape deck that had it. It belonged to my aunt, so when we went to my aunt's house, I would use it with my Tandy PC4 with great excitement.
Yeah, these guys, the sharp ones are, I think, I think Radio Shack rebranded the Sharp. So I just put a picture up of a PC1211, which has a very sad-looking display because of course as they grow old, they I don't know, degrade. But the display that is failing, and I think if you go back a year and a half or something like that, somewhere in our past, we mentioned that someone was making new ones that you could put in there. What I was hoping to do was to find a picture of like the big thing that you can put the Sharp in, because there's some sort of thing that has a printer and a cassette interface. It's quite large. It's possible that
It's
this
a
might
horse.
be what I was thinking about. So it's got a printer over there and comes on a little case. This is one thing that I have too many of, and they all have like a battery inside that you need to clip out, or else it's all gonna like melt. But okay, let's see. What else happened in 1980? Oh, well, okay. So one thing that happened in 1980 was where is this? Well, the Epson MX80
That was a big
came
deal.
out. Yeah, and I'm trying to find the tab for it. But anyway, we can talk about that while I try to find the tab. But yeah, Epson had dot matrix printers before that, but the MX80 is the one that I think kind of like took off.
Is that the one that basically created the protocol that everyone ended up using? Like every computer was Epson, or every printer was quote Epson compatible, and what it meant was that it used the escape codes from the MX80. Is that correct?
I do not know, but that sounds quite plausible.
Earl would know.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
Earl. He's the Epson expert on the show.
I never had an MX80, but I had an LX80, which is like a yellowy, sleek. I was form of function even back then. And it was a great looking printer. I loved my LX80.
Ah, okay.
That was smooth. I would own that today, because all printers suck. So I might as well own those.
Yeah, I never had an Epson, but I did have an Epson, quote unquote, Epson compatible, and I feel like it was Epson MX80. All I know for sure is that I think on the printer card we had to set the dip switches for Epson, and then it took us an entire day to find the correct driver in print shop. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
We literally had to try every single driver until one of them just worked, and we don't, to this day, don't know why.
Excellent. Yeah, it does seem like there were a lot of so the one I think I remember, I don't know if I had an MX80. I may have borrowed one of these, but there was also an FX80 I know we had, and you said you had the LX80.
Was the L was the letter quality ones that with the L meant?
I think there was LQs. I think that was like the LQ.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking
whatever.
of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like FX might be the ones I was thinking of, the one that ended up setting the standard that everyone used, but I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know.
F stood
Earl.
for funky.
Where are
Earl,
you,
we need
Earl?
Earl. Say his name 3 times.
Yeah. Earl's just flipping his table right now. We're getting all this wrong.
I had the only L letter quality one I ever had was the Apple one, the Apple Image-Writer LQ or whatever, that big beast. Mm-hmm. So the only time I had a printer that was more than like a 9x9 matrix of dots. You don't need more than that.
But it wasn't a daisy wheel though, right? It was.
I never had a daisy wheel. I still want one. I have a little daisy wheel hole in my soul I've yet to fill. I have nothing that could connect to it, but someday.
I think at Kansas Fest this year I picked up, maybe it's something I can go grab it, but it's a accessory kit for the daisy wheel printer for the Lisa. It's like it's a very weird little niche thing, but I figured, where else am I going to find something like this?
I think that the most underappreciated Apple printer was the Scribe. Like you could get them with the 2C, and it was thermal. It was a thermal printer, so you had to buy the weird paper for it, like the fax paper. But it was
for when you want to make sure you don't have your stuff in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's my essay, and it's gone.
It's like Snapchat for the 80s.
It really was. Yeah, the quality was mediocre, and the ink faded in a week. But it was completely silent, which was amazing in the 80s to have a dot matrix printer that was silent.
Well, before you got your driver to work, your printer would have been silent too.
Fair.
Right.
Yeah, that is fair.
Yeah, so this wasn't. There was the silent type as well, which was the early one that also was thermal, but yeah, I think that's I think neither one of these produced things that lasted.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, none of the dot matrices were great anyway, honestly. Like all of my, I found some of my early dot matrix printouts from my Epson compatible when I went through my parents' basement, and most of it is no longer readable. Like it's so faded. It's surprising how much the regular stuff has faded as well.
Somebody should come out with those sound apps that you can make white noise you can sleep to. They should come out with a Gen X sound app and it has stuff like listen to a dot matrix printer.
I don't want to listen to that.
That would put me to sleep. Lull me to the sound.
Oh, God. I used to close my door and go downstairs while printing because it was just so ear-bleedingly loud.
Hop on your bike
Yeah.
across town.
Yeah, exactly. I was not allowed to print if my parents were home because the noise drove them crazy, even with the door closed. So,
In the chat, Trevor says he's adding something to bingo is when Paul walks off camera and returns with something obscure.
Yes, I will definitely do that just for the thing. But excellent. Okay, and then the only other thing that seemed like it was kind of like a striking 1980s thing was not that PacMan.
Never heard of it.
So, I guess at some point we were going to get there, but yeah. So PacMan came out in 1980, and I played a lot of that.
Do you remember the first time you
played
played
more
Pac-Man?
of Ms. Pac-Man?
I remember there's a couple of arcade games where I remember the first time I ever played them. And weirdly, Pac-Man is one of the ones. It was in a Holiday Inn in, I think it's either New Hampshire or Vermont. It's one of those ones where you have the hotel and there was like a big dome that like an inflated thing.
Oh,
And that's
yeah,
where the
yeah.
pool was. And there was like out around the pool were some arcade games. And it was a Pac-Man. And I was like,
Wow.
"Damn, my life has changed." Yeah.
those have a cult following now. Those Holiday Inns that were like inside the giant dome.
Yeah.
There's whole websites devoted to them, and people go looking for the ruins of them. I had never seen one, but that's cool that you actually remember one of them.
And the first time I played Frogger was on a cruise. Oddly, it was a Frogger cocktail on a cruise. So you play, I think of it as a cocktail game. So it's odd associations.
Interesting.
Not really.
Holiday Inn Holodomes.
Holodome.
Yeah, that's right,
There you
yeah.
go. Welcome to Holodome.
Yeah.
Where we battle it out.
What I read about them was that because the pool was in the dome, it basically made the entire dome into a mold factory. And
I can imagine.
yeah, and the maintenance apparently was just like incredible on these
It must have
domes.
just smelled like so much chlorine. I have no memory,
Yeah.
but I remember walking like, whoa.
Yeah, that was apparently ultimately what doomed them, was that the maintenance on them was terrible because of the conditions inside created by the pool. But it was it was a neat idea.
So, one of the things that everybody knows, the little bit of trivia, I guess, is that Pac-Man was originally Puck-Man, and they decided
stuck
that
with
this was, well, it was they're going to put it in a place with a bunch of youths or
Yeah.
Youths.
drunk adults, and that was just it's the defacing possibilities are just too
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, they were not wrong about that, I'm sure. Like a little piece of white tape strategically placed is all it would take, and yeah, that was absolutely going to happen. So I think they made a good call on that.
Yep.
But I mean, Pac-Man's a better name anyway. Like it's better at being an abstract word, I think, than being a real word. It's just like a stronger brand somehow. I mean, we do that nowadays for Googleability, but I think it was still a good move in those days to have a word that didn't really mean anything as your character.
And along with the Space Invaders Alien, I think the Pac-Man is like one of the like icons of arcades. Like just
Yeah.
waiting for like Pac-Man is just like so iconic and it's so representative of arcades of the time. It's insane. It's insane how big it was.
Well, it was stronger as a brand, I think, than it was as a game. Like, it was a perfectly good game. It was fine. But, I mean, to this day, like, my 16-year-old nephew today knows what Pac-Man is. It's just such a cultural phenomenon that's gone on for 50 years. Like, it's sort of amazing.
And all the spin-offs and the TV show and
The cartoons and the board games and the drinks and the McDonald's toys. And, it's just gone on and on and on. Does
The
Midway?
cereal.
The cereal. I used to eat the cereal.
Oh, really?
the cereal that eats you.
Yeah. Occasionally my parents would let me buy the cereal.
And Jeremy says, yeah, the song. Yeah, that PacMan Fever song.
PacMan Fever song. I have that on vinyl.
Oh,
very
Yeah,
nice.
I am an
That's-
insufferable hipster.
Yep.
I've talked about that on the show. Actually, that album is great for retro enthusiasts because it's actually all songs about video games. So there's an Asteroid song and there's a Defender song. And I know I've talked about this before, but the Defender song is great. It's like a somber ballad about this guy who leaves his family to go off and defend the universe from the aliens, and they're never going to see him again. And it's not as catchy as the Pac-Man Fever song, but that album is surprisingly delightful, even though nobody knows any other songs on it besides that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I know this came up before, but now that I'm reminded, I do have to listen to the rest of this. I think
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
it's worth it.
Buckner and Garcia.
I don't have the album or anything, but I do agree it's really good.
Talk about
I do
cashing
have
in.
the Lenny and the Squigtones album, though, so I've got my hipster moments.
Got to respect these guys for cashing in on that trend, though. To put out that album in 1982, and they're like, I mean, they'd probably never had to work again just because they put out that one song at exactly the right cultural moment,
Yeah.
and somehow didn't get sued. I don't know. Like nowadays, they would have been sued into oblivion within a week, but I guess it was the 80s. You got away with a lot more in those days.
Because of the cocaine.
Yeah, probably.
I did. I mean, I don't know the story behind how this was made, but I mean, like one thing that is really pretty cool about Pac-Man is I don't know. There's kind of like a hero's journey kind of aspect to it. You're the underdog and you're being chased. You're not. It's not just like you going out and shooting monsters or whatever. It's you have an independent thing to do, and occasionally you can gain superpowers. So whatever's attractive about Superman, it has that. It has that going for it. But there's just some sort of philosophy of it. I think that makes it pleasant in a way that just like shooting aliens or even rocks floating around.
Well, and it had a story. Like I think we forget that how important that was at the time when video games didn't have stories yet. So it had little cutscenes where Pac-Man was chasing after Ms. Pac-Man, and there was a little story being told between every level, which seems trivial to us now, but at the time was a huge deal. Like that was like, it was a story. It's like, oh, video games don't have stories. Well, this one did. And they did the same thing with Donkey Kong. And, the Japanese really got the importance of adding that layer to video games really early.
All right. I think it's possible we have made it through 1980. Anything else anyone wanted to get in there? I think we covered all the ones I highlighted. All right, so then I guess we can move to items of interest in news. Carrington, you have the first of these.
Okay, then I am going to share a video and describe it for those people at home.
Yeah, good audio, great.
A very smart person recognized that the best keyboard, and Quinn will agree with me here, the best keyboard ever is the 2GS keyboard. Like, just so good, shockingly good. And I fought for ages on the correct location of the caps lock, and I fought all the battles that I lost. But my gosh, what a keyboard! And this fellow has reimagined it by taking an old keyboard and converting it to Bluetooth and giving it a whole bunch of new features. And you can watch his follow along video where he takes the keyboard, takes it all apart, figures out how to get the caps lock key to talk to modern computers, how to embed Bluetooth, how to give it a little dial on the side so you can do like volume controls, how to take the power button that's built in the top of it and put a video display in it so that you can switch between Bluetooth sources and see its battery. I mean, just turns it into the most phenomenal modern keyboard that is fully wireless, is USB-C for charging for the ports on the side, and just like, I would give anything if this person would just sell this keyboard. But no, we can just look on and admire the keyboard that they make that we can't have. But it is an absolutely spectacular project. Like, it just does everything you would want with a 2GS keyboard and turns it into the best thing ever. So it's a crazy journey to take on YouTube.
And I think they were talking about this on the Slack, and I think someone said that he used a non-functional keyboard as well, so he didn't destroy a working GS keyboard, which is good because they are increasingly rare and expensive, which is kind of nice. But does he? Do you know? I haven't watched this yet, but does he somehow make it usable in a modern context?
Yes. Like, that's the whole thing. Is it and has a whole. Has to put these chips in to convert things over, and just is now currently using it. Like at the very end, you see just sitting in front of a modern computer, just using away. And then like, this is now your daily driver Bluetooth keyboard. And I'm like, oh, jealousy.
Do you know how he does like function keys?
I don't know how anybody does anything.
Yeah, like that's the problem with this is that like you can convert it to Bluetooth, but it doesn't have all the keys you need
and
nowadays,
had to do a little chip thing that had to, and walks through like design, the first time ever designing his own little PCB and all the things he'd have to need and how to wire them up and get them to fit in, and just, I don't know. All I did was look at the pretty pictures and say, I want that.
It looks like he did it with the mouse as well. Is that true? Looks like he made it.
Maybe. I think that's off to the side. That wasn't part of the video I watched. Who knows? This person, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. If you like that keyboard, this is just a delightful watch. You'll sit down for 15 minutes and just drool. So
I'm going to watch this.
Yeah.
So the key switches themselves remain, or are they?
Yeah.
Are
No.
being
Kept all the
replaced too?
existing key switches, just cleaned everything, and it's all just, you're still using the same keyboard. It just has a whole bunch of new functionality.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's super, super amazing.
So did it?
It did.
Did it replace? So like, can you plug it into your 2DS or not? Or
It's no longer an ADB thing. It's now wireless. You got it connects by Bluetooth or USB-C. It's no ADB-ness anymore.
Though I think you could get. I wonder if you could use a wombat or something
To go back.
That would be ironic. Yeah, go back to ADB.
But there are Bluetooth receivers for the Apple II, so you could use this as a Bluetooth keyboard on an Apple II. So that was a journey.
Yeah. Those bits are going for a ride.
Whee!
Yeah, I mean, it would be actually pretty cool though to be able to use this for everything, because that it is the best keyboard.
That would almost be. Yeah, I would seriously consider that if it's easy enough to make it work on both. I wouldn't want to risk destroying my only GS keyboard, but if I could get another one, I would do this to it because I would love to daily drive my GS keyboard. That would be great. I mean, I did it on my Mac well into the late 90s.
As did I. I used this keyboard on my Macs for forever.
Yeah, because you didn't need function keys on Macs until very recently. So like, I think early 2000s is really when you started really needing function keys on a Mac. But up until then, this was still a great keyboard.
Yeah. Here's mine.
Oh.
Nice.
Bingo.
Yeah. That's not super rare. It's only.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be more obscure to get your bingo slot.
Right.
But it was within arm's reach, which, I mean, mine isn't, so that's something. No. I don't apparently podcast from a sphere of retro computing gear. It's just out of frame on camera.
The way that Paul was.
Yeah.
Right.
Someday Paul's just going to zoom out on his camera, and it's just going to be a perfectly packed Tetris ball of retro gear.
Right.
I think if Paul's actually like a Matrix thing, it's like we need keyboards.
Yeah.
They all come sliding in.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the wall of Sam Coupe is just. Yeah.
Oh, the Sam Coupe. All the bingo slots are being checked today, it seems.
Yeah.
Carrington's girlfriend had a Sam Coupe.
It might be actually kind of cool to have something set up like those, like the library library compressed shelves or whatever, so that you could sort of wheel open whatever, like the Commodore shelf.
Yeah, the shelves with the cranks on them. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I feel like we maybe saw something where it was kind of like a Ferris wheel or something
to go
where
between your computers. That'd be good.
You can kind of like spin it around so that whatever your Sinclair is set up is spun into place.
Maybe the real answer is to have less stuff, but
yeah,
it is.
All these options are tempting, though. I admit.
Less is better. Yeah. Oh, I got a new lamp. If it shows, but I have a new lamp.
Oh, it's nice.
With a 4-foot tall lampshade on it.
Wow, that's cool.
That is pretty cool.
How does it feel to own 5 things?
Notice how I got rid of the other lamp.
Oh, so you one in, one out.
One
That's
in, one.
fair.
Often it's 1 in, 2 out, but yes.
Yep.
So your minimalist lifestyle is intact.
Yes. Whew.
Excellent.
Close one.
Okay, so my thing is very, very quick, and it's only just sort of. Jeremy says, Carrington says, get lamp.
Carrington says take lamp.
That's right.
Lamp.
That's right. That's right.
No, first send a lamp, then take a lamp.
Yes.
Throw a lamp.
Yeah. Okay, so my thing is basically just a tiny little update on something that we talked about last time, which was there was this auction for a 2GS
this.
that was painted. It was painted in blue pinstripes. You can hear us talk about it on the last episode. One thing that was kind of cool about it was that it was the machine that was on the cover of the January 1989 Insider. And somehow this machine made it all the way into 2024 and then got listed by the friend of someone who had this, I guess, when it was actually the thing. So the update is basically just that we know where it is.
Oh, cool.
So Will Scullin got it, and
Nice.
reports that it smells heavily of smoke.
Oh,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I get the show and the Slack mixed up in my head. We haven't talked about this yet.
Yeah.
Since it was acquired. Yeah. He also said the Applied Ingenuity drive in it is dead. So whatever's on it may not be recoverable. So that was too bad.
Yeah, either dead or wiped. But it doesn't contain anything interesting. And I think there were some EPROMs in there that he was going to check. But at any rate, so that's the update on that. Basically, that this piece of history has been saved, and it is such a funny thing. The fact that it's painted only on the side that faced the camera and stuff.
right. Talk
Yeah.
about being sure of the shot you want to get. Like, you didn't
Yeah,
think we should
no
do
kidding.
this side just in case. Crazy.
Yeah.
What kind of art direction is that?
And you can see how hastily painted it was too. Like they didn't get the reveal behind the monitor, and they didn't paint the back side of the slopes, and it's extremely hasty. There's overspray all over it. They didn't mask anything. They just kind of spray bombed it.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I think all of the replies in the Slack about this announcement were, "Thank you for saving me from buying it," because we all felt like one of us should buy this thing,
Yeah.
but none of us really wanted it.
Yeah, and this it was possible at a certain point to buy this issue on eBay, but it's sold quite possibly at the same time.
Yeah, hopefully Will bought it. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so thank you, Will, for buying that. And
Will
we
can
look
now
forward to
go
hearing
as
more.
it for Halloween. Go as that magazine.
Yeah. That yes, very few people would understand, but whoever understands is your new best friend.
He's my new best friend and would say, "Look at my bag." Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that was it.
Actually,
for
Will Scullin's in the chat, and he says,
Oh,
"Yep,
hey.
I bought it." Thank you for buying it, Will.
that. Yes. Okay. Quinn, yours is next.
Yeah, so this is kind of a neat thing that came out recently. So some of us may know John Calhoun. You might know him better as Soft Dorothy Software with a creepy logo that I don't like. But other than that, you might know him for Glider on the Mac. He was kind of one of the early successful Mac game developers, kind of a big fish in a very small pond. And I think we all played Glider, was the paper airplane game. And I'm sure, if you had to be in a cave with your Mac to have not played that game. And what's cool though is that he has now released he's done two interesting things lately. He's released a full set of source code and assets for all of his released games over on GitHub. So if you want the source code to Glider and his other games, it's all there. And what's also cool about it is that the assets are all there, the art and everything. The only downside is it's released as a disk image on GitHub. So it's a Mac disk image that you then have to install in an emulator. He didn't pull the source code and assets out and just put them on GitHub, which would have been nice. But at least it's there, it's accessible. So that's really awesome. But more recently, it was a little while ago, he also released all of his prototypes that he worked on. He was very much a practicer of the move fast and prototype in game development. So he built a whole ton of games that never went anywhere. He's got a list of them here. There's like, he built like 20 games and only ever actually released like 4 or 5 of them. And all of the others he's now releasing as these sort of partially playable prototypes. He's got a driving game, and he's got a couple of shooters and a couple of platformers. He's got some 3D stuff. He built this like swashbuckling game. He's got a 3D shooter that looks quite far along. So some of these are pretty far along, and he still abandoned them because they just weren't working, which I think is a hard thing to do as a game developer, but a smart thing to do. So it's pretty cool to see all of this stuff now accessible. And of course, we'll have links to all this in the show notes, and it's worth looking in there as well, just to see the source code to Glider as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It would be fun. It'd be fun to like try to create a new black and white Mac game, though.
Yeah,
it's quite possible that the fun part would be the first 20 hours, and then not the later 80 to get it to actually work.
Yeah. That's kind of why prototyping is fun, because you do that first 30-40% of the work, the fun part, and then once you start getting bugs and you start getting hard problems to solve, then you just stop. Which that's my teens and 20s in a nutshell.
Totally.
I have hard drives full of 20-30% finished games, but so the title of the blog post is "Move Fast and Abandon Things," which I kind of like. And so certainly he's a legend of the Mac game scene, as small as it was. You definitely played at least one of his games. It was fun to be reminded of one of his other successful games. It's not here; it's over in the GitHub. Stella Obscura. Do you guys remember Stella Obscura on the Mac? It was a 3D game where to play it, you had to build like a cardboard viewfinder thing so that your eyes were isolated from each other, which you stuck up against the black and white Mac screen. And it actually had real kind of 3D effect. It was neat. You could only play it for 10 minutes or something, and then you got a headache, and also the novelty wore off. But that was really neat. So he's got the source code to that in there as well, if you want to see how Stella Obscura was written.
Cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I knew the name. It's probably I probably downloaded it from a FTP site or something at some point, but I don't think I ever knew what it was. So that's quite cool.
Oh, and Jeremy Rand makes a good point in the chat there that a lot of the files in these are Apple double forks resource files, that kind of stuff that's hard to put into GitHub because Macs had a lot of weird formats that don't translate into standard modern flat file formats. So it could be difficult to get it off of those disk images for that reason. The source code itself, you probably could, but you couldn't probably build something that was easy to just compile because all the resource forks and stuff wouldn't be there that Apple, that early Mac stuff all used. They did a lot of weird stuff in those days. So that might be hard, but need to see the code.
Well, and I guess that's an advantage of distributing it on disk images, is that stuff gets preserved. And if you can get your ThinkC running or whatever it is. Then...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was literally all ThinkC that he used. Yeah, that was, I think, what we all used at the time.
Yep.
But if you get your ThinkC fired up, I have a lot of ThinkC projects of my own sitting on disk images that I can't really get off of those disk images.
Yeah, I think probably, like 10 years ago or something, I did manage to like sort of recompile some things that I wrote in ThinkC.
Cool.
But I don't know. I suppose not much has changed really. I could probably go back and do exactly that same thing again. But
yeah, I managed to run a couple of my old projects in Basilisk at one point, and because I still had a hard drive image that I had burned onto a CD that still had ThinkC installed on it and everything. So I was able to get that up and running in Basilisk, and everything still was right where I left it. So I was able to hit build, and it build and ran. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, it's like in a walled garden, like getting it out of that disk image in any way that would be compilable or buildable in any kind of, even in an emulator, it would be really difficult. A lot of that stuff's just kind of trapped in that very rarefied 90s Mac environment of resource forks and weird file formats and such.
I really love, the occasional time when I open a Word document from 1992 or whatever, and it's like this little tiny square in the corner of my screen.
Yeah.
Because somehow it remembered how big it was supposed to be, and it, whatever. You could only fit 5 lines at a time on your screen because of all the toolbars. But,
Well, and the other thing that makes it even harder, do you guys remember those hard drive doublers that were all the rage in the 90s?
Sure.
What were they
Disk doubler.
called?
Like disk
Yeah,
doubler.
disk doubler was the one that I used on the Mac. Yeah, there was a famous one on PC that kind of invented this idea. I forget what it was called, but yeah. So I mean, on top of all those other challenges, these hard drive images that I have are disk doubler files. So you also have to get, so everything's all weirdly compressed, and so you have to get that running as well to get the files out. So you'd almost have to set up like a network card within Basilisk or something and transfer the files out that way. Like there'd be no way to just read these disk images or mount them in any kind of simple way on an emulator. But yeah, disk doubler. Oof.
yeah, I've been trying to Google this and like to try to remember because there was a competitor. Disk doubler,
Yeah.
auto doubler, those were all one.
Yeah,
company.
auto doubler was the one I used, the later version of disk doubler. Yeah. Someone in the chat put in what the name of the PC one was that invented this whole idea of compressing your hard drive, because it was super famous. Everybody knew it. But yeah, and of course it did work, but it made your computer slower. And then sometimes the compression would get corrupted, and then your hard drive
Too
was
bad.
just gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I encountered RAM doubler. I read about what it does, and I had no idea about compression. I was like, "Come on,
Yeah.
this. What do you mean this works? It works."
Yeah.
It seemed like crazy magic to me as a kid when I
Yeah.
encountered RAM doubler. I was like, "God,
Yeah.
this is bonkers."
Stacker, thank you,
Yeah,
Christopher, in
that
the
sounds-
chat. Stacker was the
Stacker,
PC one. Yeah,
Stacker.
Stacker. Yeah, because I had Carrington's exact reaction when Stacker came out. All my PC friends were all so excited about it. I had heard that pitch. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That can't possibly work. You can't just double your hard disk storage by clicking some button. It's like, no, actually, it's actually pretty much exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. It did some other stuff too, like it made better use of defragmented blocks and empty space from deleted files and stuff. Like it was a little bit better about that, but yeah, it was a dangerous game. Like you were just counting the days until one day Stacker malfunctioned, and then your hard drive was just unreadable now because it was just a giant blob of compression that nobody could read.
Mm-hmm.
But as a Mac user
sort
at the
of
time, I always
foreshadowing
knew
RAID.
my computer could go down at any moment.
Yeah,
Just a
that's true.
bomb, So
Well, and I mean, in Stacker's defense, I had the exact same thing happen to a modern Mac. One of my early Mac OS 10 era Macs used File Vault, that thing that would encrypt your entire hard drive. And it malfunctioned somehow. I lost a hard drive on a Mac doing that, like a modern Mac in like 2000, I want to say 2012, 2010, somewhere in there. I lost my hard drive to File Vault
holy.
because one day I put in my password and it didn't accept it, and that was it. The hard drive was just lost. I don't know what happened to it. It just stopped working, and then I couldn't get into it anymore.
at that point, you're supposed to get an email from somebody overseas. Just, I've got you. Give me your password.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
You only got the bad first half of ransomware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't get to send any Bitcoin to anybody to get it back. So yeah, I never used File Vault again. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I have stayed away from it for fearing exactly that. It's just like,
Yeah.
I just want to be able to recover. But
Yep.
I guess in the modern ecosystem, it's often the case that at least if you sort of go all in, your desktop or your documents kind of live somewhere independently of the machine you're using it on. So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah, and I mean nowadays I have Time Capsule and I have a NAS and I have multiple backup layers, so it would be safer to do it now, but I still won't. I still don't trust it. Yeah.
And it does feel like you're
Cowards.
burning unnecessary cycles, even though it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I get the appeal of it. If you travel a lot and your computer could easily be lost, or if you work in, information security and you're worried about foreign governments getting into your machine or whatever, like there's lots of reasons to use it, but none of those apply to me. So
all I've done is never close anything. I've never saved a file. It's all running live right now. That's how a real tough guy does his computer programming.
Yep.
Let me tell you, I'm very cool that way.
Okay. All right. I guess
I swear I have family members who probably do that. What are you doing? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just never closed the tab since the 90s.
No, that's Paul. Paul has never closed a tab since the 90s.
That's true.
Yeah.
We've seen his screen when he shares.
Okay, all right. We can maybe move on to Carrington's thing.
I do. What do I got?
And Carrington
This-
has a thing,
I got a
just
thing.
to make that edit better.
I got a thing. Yeah, I do. This is really cool. So let's say you're the kind of person who buys, and on whim, a dot matrix printer. We were talking about it before. So now you got a dot matrix printer. What do you do with it? Well, if you're like this fellow, whose blog we're going to link to, he picks up a Raspberry Pi Zero and says, I'm going to print off a daily news sheet automatically to myself every day. And this is a really, really fun project. And I like that he walks through every step of this. Uses PHP on a Raspberry Pi, says that's what I'm comfortable with. And if you're used to like old school kind of programming, it's a good reminder how like PHP or Perl or whatever can be used so similar to like you used to use BASIC. It's crazy. So it just gets a serial to USB adapter, hooks up the dot matrix printer to the Raspberry Pi, and knocks out a quick script first to talk to the printer. Says, can I do this? Figure out how to pipe it. It's on LP0, so it's pretty straightforward. Then realizes it's only has certain characters it'll take. So what's the character set? Finds a manual, and then just use a little PHP script with like a daily script that launches, pulls weather, stock, news headlines, a couple of resident things, and prints off like his own little news sheet that he gets every day. It's just in the morning at 8 o'clock, out comes his little daily summary on a dot matrix printer. And I adore this. I think this is a fantastic project. And I like the fact that in this blog post, it lists all the code he uses. You could absolutely follow along and do this yourself. You'd have to modify a little bit for the printer you get. It might use a different character command set or something. But this would get you 90% of the way there. Just Raspberry Pi, serial adapter, and a dot matrix printer. He's got an old Star dot matrix printer. And bingo, you get yourself a daily sheet. And I think it's fantastic. I love this project.
That's a pretty fun idea. It's the screenshot or this picture is neat of seeing like modern headlines on dot matrix printouts. It's pretty neat. Talking about like the U.S. election and other stuff that we definitely don't want to talk about. But
yeah, and obviously, the nice thing is he picks certain sources. He says, I'm picking these because they have like an open, either an API or a free thing you can use. Like you're allowed to get free headlines from the New York Times. You're going to pay for other things, but you grab the headlines free. So here's the sources I used and how I would do it, what the weather like is going to be today. And just, it's such a neat idea and so easily implemented with some like just great tools. And I just think like for a retro enthusiast, this is a really fun, very doable project for anybody who has even a little tiny bit of coding experience. This is a fun project in PHP or your scripting language of choice, but the examples are on PHP, and I think this is just fantastic. I love this. Yeah. This is tempting. This is highly tempting to put together. I like this idea a lot. Making a tea, and I hear, oh yeah.
You can use that as your alarm clock in the morning too.
No, it's going to put me to sleep. We established this would lull me to sleep.
Wake up all your neighbors in the condo too.
But this kind of idea that if you were like following stuff, if somebody mentions you somewhere, you could like you could do a lot with this. And this is a great like starter thing to say, okay, now I've got something that looks on the internet at specific times or whatever, and also prints out what it finds. You could do things with this. I love this. I absolutely love this project. So.
Mm-hmm.
I liked your point about how the PHP is a lot like how we used to use BASIC, because it very much is. If you look at his code further up, it's shown here that it's just like basic string manipulation and stuff, which is exactly the kind of stuff we used to use in AppleSoft. Mm-hmm. And it's just as quick to get up and running as AppleSoft was. Yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah. And a great use for Pi Zero or something like that, like a little tiny, very cheap thing with just a serial adapter. You plug it and a printer in, and you have a working thing that can look at the internet and do stuff. And you could just, SS2 and just have fun. I like it a lot. This is a great project. So we will link to this and all the examples in the show notes.
Yeah, it's like one of the things I thought at first is that like we're wasting paper, but maybe we can make the case that this is actually like good for the environment, and that like you had like this fanfold paper, you had it anyway. What are you going to use it for?
Yeah, what are you going to use it for?
If you do this, it'll enter the recycling stream.
Yes. Okay.
Rather than just sitting in your closet. Yeah. So.
Well, one of the previous times that we talked about printers, we discovered that you can still buy a dot matrix fanfold printer paper, like Office Depot or whatever still sells it amazingly, because I guess there are a few niches that still use it. So someone's still making it and they still sell it. So you can in fact buy it.
And yeah, Vance in the chat observed that the nice thing about it in that format is that it can, like, it can be however long you need it to be.
Yeah,
It
that's
can
true.
keep
Yeah.
going.
But with a dot matrix printer as well, it's very easy to know exactly how long stuff's going to be because it's mostly like fixed with characters. So you can say, I'm going to print off one page. It'll be exactly like you can actually also control it. Like I just dig it. I dig this project a lot. Knocked it out really quickly and I like it. And I think this is an example of like a fun project where you can use a piece of retro gear and it would be very accessible to a lot of listeners to the show. So I dig this. Whereas like that keyboard thing that I did before that video, that I just look at that and think it's lovely. Whereas this is the kind of thing you could knock out in an afternoon easy. So I dig this a lot.
I think, I mean, you could even make it easier if you wanted. One of the times when Earl was on the show, he pointed out that you can still buy modern Epson dot matrix printers. They still make one. It's like modern USB, but it is a dot matrix printer, like a 9-pin dot matrix printer. Because there are still a few niches that use them, apparently. Like up until pretty recently, it's gone now, but up until pretty recently, US car rental places all still used dot matrix printouts. Probably because of some obscure law requiring them to use multi-part forms.
Oh, right, yeah, the
So
impact.
they would, so they required an impact printer, and so you'd get the carbon copy of your rental agreement when you rented a car. Now they have those little iPad things, but up until maybe 5-10 years ago, they still used dot matrix. I think that might have been the last holdout industry that was still using them, but yeah, for someone who wants to make it even easier, you can still buy a dot matrix printer apparently.
Cool.
One thing about the fanfold paper that I find rather annoying is that, like, I do have, we were talking back when we were talking about the Scribe, I guess, I do have some old printouts. Not as many as I would want, because, side story that I've told before, I went home at one point, and, like, back to where I grew up, and sort of found boxes of stuff from when I was a kid, and among those things were some printouts and some magazines and some, like some various stuff that I thought, okay, I'm gonna ship this back to myself, but I was in a hurry, and maybe I shouldn't lay blame, but at any rate, I didn't ship it to myself. I left it with the people that were still there and said, can you ship this to me? And what ended up happening was that it was in a box. It was a fairly nice, compact-looking box, but the bottom was not taped shut as much as it needed to be for how much paper was in there. And so eventually the empty box with an open bottom arrived. And the cool thing about that was that actually, like, they were some magazines from like the 80s and stuff, and they got delivered. Like, they got re-delivered 30 years later because the address was still on them, and they got dumped in the mail stream.
That's amazing, actually. That's super amazing.
So they didn't get lost entirely. My printouts did.
I thought you were going to say you got a piece of fanfold paper in your mailbox, but then it was still connected to everything, and then you just
all the way down
it
the street,
all the way back to the source of the person who mailed it to you.
That would be cool, because then I could retrieve some of these things. But yeah, no. Anyway, so I have some fanfold paper, but not all of it. And the problem with that is I want to scan it, but how? You can't just put it in your sheet feeder and hit go.
Yeah.
So it's a big pain, So like I have been trying to like separate them and then run them through the sheet feeder, but that sometimes it'll split a line, and I haven't yet figured out what the right way to do is. Maybe what I should do is use a ThunderScan or something and just like go full old technology and scan it back in the way it was printed out.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't know how you would preserve some of that because it was the Wild West as far as margins and stuff go. So you could just print right down across the fanfold, and then no modern scanner isn't going to be able to scan right to the very edges like that, probably.
Yeah,
it's tough.
All right, let's see. I guess we are to my thing, and let's see. I have just a fairly short thing. I came across this. There was an eBay auction for a USB card drive APF02 for the Atari Portfolio. So the Atari Portfolio is this little like PC compatible that Atari made. That's like little and cute, and I kind of want one just because it is little and cute. I think this is famous. Isn't this the one that's famous for like hacking an ATM machine or something in some movie?
Yes, it was. I think it was what they used in Terminator 2 when John Connor hacks the ATM. Yeah.
Yeah, but so I think it it uses these little memory cards, and so the thing that I saw on eBay was basically just a link to this site at apfram.com, and so these are they're little like USB readers. It's essentially like a like an SD card reader or whatever that you can plug into your USB port. And what's special about these is they will read the memory cards that went with the portfolio. So if you had some memory cards that existed still and you wanted to get the stuff off of them or write to them, this is a solution for that. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, that's cool. Huh.
But the other thing they sell, which might conceivably be even cooler, is like new memory cards. So you don't have to rely on the stability of your retro period memory cards. You can get rewritable memory cards for your portfolio. So
That's super cool. This machine has a cult following. Like there's a segment of Atari people that are really, really crazy about it.
yeah, and I think I'd be interested in getting one if it didn't hurt too much. I mean, like I don't want it that much, but it would be fun to play with one.
Yeah, I think they're hard to get. They're pretty sought after because they are kind of an awesome thing. They're kind of the perfect form factor for a palm top PC.
Mm-hmm. And they say Atari, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it says Atari on it, but it's a PC, which is neat. And then the form factor is pretty awesome. It's got a nice little screen on it. It is a pretty cool thing.
It must be pretty. I mean, if it's a MS DOS type machine, it must actually be very, very like short lines.
Right.
Like the aspect ratio must be quite bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it may not. I don't think it has a full like CGA screen or anything. I think it's like MDA, IBM MDA text or whatever that standard was. So it might only have like 10 lines of text or something.
I see.
I'm not sure. Oh, there it is. It has 240 by 64 graphics, it says, and 40 characters by 8 lines. So yeah, it's probably the IBM MDA text screen standard for text. So like it would run WordStar, but only at 8 lines high, kind of thing.
Right, and you could run Doom, but only like see your status, not actually what's happening.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay, anyway, there's that. Quinn, you have one other thing, it looks like.
I do. So this was kind of a neat little window into a side of the late 8-bit and early 16-bit demo scene that I was never really aware of. I think a lot of us watched those demos at the time and thought they were neat and thought the artwork was cool, but we didn't think a whole lot about where that artwork came from. And well, it turns out it all came from Boris Vallejo, and it was mostly ripped off, which in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, okay, that checks out. Like, yeah, a lot of that artwork was suspiciously good for a bunch of teenagers who came out of nowhere. It turns out what there was a whole lot of was pixel copying Boris Vallejo. So in general, pixel copying of existing artwork was very common for how they got graphics for demo scene stuff. However, for I guess obvious reasons, Boris Vallejo in particular was especially appealing to, shall we say, the demographic that was mostly making and watching 16-bit demos. So it's a lot of women in bikinis fighting 3-armed gorillas, and here's a very Conan-looking guy killing a dragon with a guitar. So it's real classic stuff. But so this is a blog post basically written by this guy who he kind of fell down a rabbit hole of this. He was watching some older Amiga demos, and he was impressed by the artwork, and he started asking around, trying to figure out who did the artwork. And then someone else saw it and said, oh, that's Boris Vallejo. And see, then he fell down this rabbit hole and found out that basically like all roads lead to Boris when it comes to 16-bit demo scene artwork. And so it's a whole blog post basically documenting his investigation and finding all the pieces of artwork from famous demos and sourcing them to their originals. It wasn't all Boris. It was also, there was a couple of Japanese artists that were commonly ripped off as well. But yeah, it was a great ride down memory lane of Amiga and other early artwork from these demos. And Boris was an interesting choice because he did actually work in the games industry himself. not as a digital artist, but he did box art for a lot of console games and PC games. So he did the box art for Dragon Wars, Turrican, Golden Axe on the Genesis, Echo the Dolphin, famous Sega game. So he did box art for a lot of video games. And then while he was doing that, people who played his games were also quietly stealing his artwork and putting it in demos. So it was a surprisingly good read, I thought, to see where this stuff comes from. And it's not all, I should say, not all like ripped off in the sense that you might be thinking, like it wasn't just scans of his artwork. It was mostly actual aspiring graphic artists, digital artists working in programs like Deluxe Paint and sort of meticulously copying the artwork pixel by pixel, because you still had to make it look good at a very low resolution for, say, an Amiga or an Atari ST demo, and a very limited color palette. So you can't just scan it. You can't just click some button and magically Boris Vallejo's painting is in your demo. I mean, it's still, there's a lot of work to bring that artwork in. And so there's sort of it's more like a tribute, or like a tribute band is to the real band. It's sort of an interpretation of the artwork because they have to reduce the color palette so dramatically and they have to reduce the resolution. So there's a lot of detail changes and things that have to be made. And so he talks about his process for kind of figuring out when something was more interpreted and when it was more probably just scanned and then cleaned up. So there's different levels of kind of reproduction that were happening. Some of it more kind of effort than others, and some of it kind of more respectful than others. And kind of in the process, he gets inspired to try this himself. So he takes a famous Boris Vallejo painting of a Conan-looking guy swinging at a spider dragon thing with a giant axe, and decides to try and replicate that himself on an Atari ST color palette of only 4 colors. And so he goes through the process of doing that himself just to see what these early 90s artists were doing in these demos to get this artwork in there. And he gained an appreciation for what they were doing, kind of working within these really tight constraints of color and resolution. And it ends up being kind of a nice ride. So just a whole blog post all about this whole scene that I think not a lot of us knew about. If we weren't, part of an active demo writing crew, you might not have ever thought about where all that artwork came from and how it was being made. You just probably, like me, I mean, I was looking at these demos from more of a programmer perspective and, being amazed by the technical aspects of it and just assuming, oh, well, the artwork, they had an artist, whatever, artwork happens. Artists exist and they make artwork and that's the end of it. And I never thought a whole lot about it. But yeah, no, it turns out there was a whole other side of that as far as how they were getting this artwork and where they were getting it from. So a really good read. We'll link to that in the show notes.
Very cool. All right.
The one image that you kept seeing with the guy with the axe is totally the Myth box, right?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm like, isn't that Myth? I swear that's...
Yeah, it's a good
do
question.
A very similar style? Like, I swear that's the image from that famous Myth.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So
I worked at Bungie. I should know that.
Yeah, that's why I thought you'd go, yeah.
So it's similar. There's a guy, I'm looking at it now. There's a guy swinging, like a monster looking thing swinging a big sickle at a guy with a sword.
I guess they're all the same sort of thing. Oh, that is very different, right? Okay, in my mind it was...
it's more similar to Myth 2. Soulblighter has like an orc dude swinging a big sword over his head at a human who's down below him. So the composition is very similar. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this fantasy artwork, I mean, it's pretty hard cheese and it's all very similar. I mean, Boris Vallejo is extremely talented. There's no question about that. But yeah, his subject matter is pretty hard cheese. I mean, there's a Conan-looking guy wearing sneakers, and it's a lot of women in gold bikinis, and it is what it is. But the talent is undeniable for sure.
All right, I think we've made it through our items of interest and news, and now a word from our sponsor,
Boris Vallejo.
that fan noise is gone, so whatever that was, someone fixed it. I think it was coming from Carrington.
Yeah, we suspected it was you. That's all right.
The worst. There wasn't a fan here though. Must have had something touch something.
Yeah, it was quite some time ago that
Yeah, it's been stopped for a while. Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
I'll start it up again.
All right, and we're back. Okay, the host retrocomputing gift idea this time is the an inflatable PacMan costume. I figured, it's October. It's the PacMan year. I don't know when this will actually make it to the feed, but maybe it'll still be October when you're hearing this. But anyway, so if you want to spend $60 on a PacMan costume,
Oh, that's terrible. That's so terrible.
it's
gosh.
it's basically just a big balloon that you insert like you insert yourself into, so your feet stick out the bottom and your head sticks out the top and your arms stick out the side.
And you spend the entire party going, I will not go to the bathroom. I will not go to the bathroom.
There's a little inflatable, like there's a machine that you use to inflate it.
They say dress for the job you want.
That's right. I don't quite understand how this works, but it must be like those, the inflatable guest beds or whatever.
Or like those Christmas decorations that people put on their lawns, like the giant Santa Claus or whatever. I think it's like those where the fan has to kind of run all the time to keep it inflated.
Yeah, I don't.
Jeremy the Jets, it's got to have a step detector go waka waka with every step. Yes, it does.
Yeah,
Waka.
I think.
Waka.
If you're given that your watch or your phone or whatever is supposed to be able to count your steps, it must be possible to write a little app that will go walk out every time you move.
Yep, I'm sure.
Every time we take one.
I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah, and maybe you can even have a setting so it'll either go like waka or it'll go bung or whatever that is that like the 2600 game does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if you can do an inflatable costume like this, I should be able to go this Halloween as a Holiday Inn Holodome and just like inflate.
Oh yeah.
Have little
There you
arcade
go.
games in a pool in me and be full of mold. It'll be great.
Yeah. Exactly. Charming. It'll be very Halloween-y.
It will be.
Nothing more Halloween than mold
Fear me.
and creepy 70s hotels that smell like chlorine.
All right. So when you're done buying your Halloween Pac-Man costumes, you can turn your attention to eBay. Carrington has some auctions for you to look at.
I do indeed. Here,
auctions from the
I will
deep
share some
past.
screens. I picked a couple of things that have the number 3 in common. 2 games that have the number 3 in common in weird ways. The first is an adventure game for the Apple II called The Usurper. What's interesting about this game, is it worth the $650 buy now? No. Notoriously, famously terrible game. Terrible. Sorry if the person who wrote the game is in the chat, but my gosh, this is just famously terrible game. What's neat about it is it came out in like 1990 or 89, something like that, by Surtech. It's a text-only text adventure. So that is a very late text adventure by a software company that was about to go out of business. and because they made choices like this. So this is the Wizardry Company, but in very, very late, right at the very end of the 80s, they decided to pump out a text-only game called The Usurper. And while it doesn't say it on the screen at all, it's actually the third in what was supposed to be a series. Did they put out games 1 and 2? No, they did not. Because it was Surtech and it was a crazy time, man. So they stuck out just game 3 of a series that was supposed to be like 5 games or something, and then they went out of business. But it's a neat and relatively obscure game. It is backed up. It's not a thing where you got to guide it because you're the only person who can possibly get it onto the archives. It's a thing that exists, but it's not a box you see much, I think. So I certainly haven't come across it in a while. So I'm like, oh, this thing. Oh, my goodness. So famously terrible game from the Wizardry people right at the end of the 80s. A text-only game. Came out for Apple II and for PC, I think. So that's my first choice. Paul, do you have at least one of these boxes?
No, I don't think I've ever heard of this.
Oh,
You sure
Paul.
it came out for the Apple II?
100%. This is the Apple II version.
Oh, okay.
This is the Apple II version for sale.
The price on this is unbelievable. Like, this is surely just someone thinking, oh, this must be valuable because it's rare.
Well, I think with old Apple II games, that's the only thing that gives them value. Like all the games are available. Yeah. All you're paying for is the fact that you want to collect the box and you want to have the physicality of the thing. And so the more obscure, in a sense, the worse the game, the more obscure, because who else would have hung onto this box? It's not even a box in great condition. It looks like some tape was put on the front or whatever, ripped off, unfortunately. But it is, I think, a complete box, and oddly has like a 3.5-inch floppy and 2 5.25-inch floppies. So I don't know if it came on both, which some games did at the time because it's such a late game. Maybe if you had a 2C, it was like, okay, we're going to ship it in this or something. I don't know, or 2C plus or something. But so this is the first one. And I always think of it as that game that is game number 3, and you can't get game 1 and 2 because they were never made. It's weird and came out with terrible reviews. Yeah.
So I think it's possible that this actually has like everything in one box. You know, that it's
Bring it all.
that it's the MS-DOS version and the Apple II version.
Oh yeah, that's
on 3.5 and 5 1/4.
So somebody really liked this game. Maybe this is an auction by the person who made the game, who's tuning in and listening to me slag on this game. I feel guilty now.
It isn't. It's a collector offloading surplus, I think, and someone who regularly posts auctions at fairly inflated prices.
Okay, yes.
But yeah,
I mean, yeah, the idea that this is, starts at $500 and $650 is crazy. Some Apple II software just goes for bonkers pricing, but I have no idea. Like, I just think it's interesting to see the box because it's a relatively obscure game, and I like the fact that it's number 3 of 5, and that's the only one that ever got made. And then my second choice is similar, that it's a number 3, and it is this game, which is the worst title of piece of software. It's driven me crazy for years. It is Odyssey, the complete app venture. I'm bothered by the archaic spelling of complete. I'm bothered by the word app venture. This piece of software has always bothered me. And it is also, but this is now super early Apple II game. So came out in 1980, and it's an adventure game, more, not a text adventure, more of the lines of like a traditional go in a bunch of places adventure game, like an Ultima thing. But before that, much earlier. And it was the third in a series. And I only recently discovered that. I always thought it was just one of the first adventure games. But it turns out the people who made this, or the person who made this, had actually made 2 adventure games before that in the late 70s. And this was the bigger one that came out in 1980. So baggy software. This is, I think, less rare than the last thing we're looking at. This kind of thing comes up quite a bit. Oh, it's the same seller. Maybe they sell it all the time. This comes up quite a bit on eBay. They're asking $800. It's crazy. This game is worth $10, whatever, and is also already backed up. But if you're a completionist and you want all the Apple II adventure software, and you really like ones that were third in a series, then this is one for you, Paul. Paul, I think it's very important that you drop the $800 and buy yourself this baggie.
This one is one of those like sought after ones, for the artifact.
But that title, right?
Yeah.
The spelling of complete bugs me. It is such a
that was a real thing in the 80s, like people wanting their stuff to seem authentic. In RPGs, they would try to use random Old English spellings of words. Like Temple of Apshai did a lot of that. Yeah, they'd use the EAT spelling in the shop with 2 P's and an E,
Right.
And spelling time with a Y and that kind of stuff to try to make it feel authentic. Yeah.
But the app venture, the complete, because what bugs me is you can easily look at this and not realize that it doesn't say adventure.
Yeah, that's weird.
App venture.
That just looks like a typo. Is that
right? It's on purpose, and the idea was because it was like an Apple II adventure, I guess. Or application adventure. I don't know. But it is definitely the complete app venture.
Yeah.
And it's always bothered me. And this is a classic art by Boris Vallejo. You can tell.
Yes, you can tell, yeah. I will say the quality of both of these items is impressive. Like the completeness, everything's there.
Sure.
I mean, that baggie might not be original. Someone might have bought a new Ziploc bag for it. But
where are you going to find a baggie?
But yeah, it is surprisingly complete and everything looks to be in very good condition. I mean, I think that price is insane. I mean, value is about more than rarity. It's also about desirability, and people want games they remember for the most part. Or games
I would suggest playing this game before you purchase it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it'll make you not want to purchase it.
I mean, only the most hardcore collector actually cares about having everything just for the thing. Most people have some emotional attachment to the stuff, and that's why they want to buy it. So.
I do have an emotional attachment to the word app venture. It's bothered me.
Yeah.
So maybe eventually I'll collect them all just to get rid of them.
You have feelings about these words. That's different than having emotional attachment.
I'm having big feelings.
Yes, I can see that on your face.
So these are my 2 choices. I thought they're both interesting and, in some way collectible Apple II adventure games. One at the very start of the 80s, one at the very end of the 80s. Both third in a series. One in a series that never existed. One I never knew existed. So those are my choices for Paul to purchase.
Yeah, I think I will leave the Odyssey out. But I mean, I think this was not part of my experience. This game, like even in its cracked and distributed versions, but I think it was well known. I mean, I think there are other segments of the Apple II community that really did, that maybe got in on it a little earlier, and so it's not totally obscure. But
No, this is the kind of game that I think would have appealed to that early adventure gamer who wants to keep track. Like it's like 3 sections, and I played half the game, and you got to keep track of, like, I've got this much wood and this much gold and all these things, and you really want to min max stuff. And I don't know, not my sort of game.
all right, let's see. I found many things. I don't know
What do you got?
which ones I'll talk about, but I'll start with this one. So this is okay. So at various times I have talked about the Apple Cat 2 modem. This is the Novation Apple Cat 2.
I think we have to add that to the bingo card.
Yeah.
It is its own bingo card.
Paul talks about the Apple Cat. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, I did a presentation about it at Kansas Fest, but which we can add more bingo. I guess we already covered the Kansas Fest bingo square, but so the thing that's okay. So the modem is, just to quickly recap, what's cool about it is that it does a lot of stuff that's not just modeming. So it's able to do 1200 baud at half duplex, and it's also able to run. It has a little X10 controller in it, or at least a capability of communicating with one. So you can turn the lights on and off. It's possible to give it a little thing that will allow you to type a number, and it'll recognize what number you typed. So you could say, like, dial 4 to turn the lamp on or whatever. The thing that's
So much easier than walking over.
Well, it's if you're calling from across the country,
Turn the lamp.
Please turn
Let me get up my phone. Da, da, da.
You don't think people do that now? I mean, they sit on their couch and they use their phone to turn the lamp off.
They do, actually.
It's true. We've come full circle on that.
But
Yeah.
dialing is easier now. It's like,
Yeah, right. But so the thing that's interesting about this auction is that there's this expansion box. So the expansion module that sort of externalizes a lot of ports and adds the stuff like the X10 controller. It allows you to plug in the handset, plug in the phone. It has an RS-232 thing, and
just try to read it.
oh, yeah. There are probably better pictures here, but at any rate.
But they're all upside down. Who is this seller?
This is a super rare thing, though. So the expansion module itself is really hard to find, and this comes with the modem and the expansion module, and it's got 3 days to go. It has 0 bids. It's starting at $160, and that does not seem like a particularly high price point for this, particularly with the expansion box. So,
Are you going to bid on it? Do you regret telling other people about it?
I'm not, just because I have an expansion box, and that's as many as I need. But yeah, they're quite uncommon, and this modem is capable of doing so much interesting stuff that it by itself is it's not like just buying a micro modem or whatever, which you can just like put in your Apple II to fill up a slot.
Yeah, like what do you do with a modem nowadays? Yeah, so this can actually do other things.
Yeah. So anyway, so I thought it was interesting to see that. Also, there's also a trivia fact which I didn't pull up here, but let me find it here. So if you go to what is it, Starring the Computer, for the Apple II, you can find the fact that there was an Apple II in National Lampoon's Vacation. Where is it? Let's look for Vacation. Here.
This might have to be a sub bingo square that Paul points out that the Apple II used in this movie had an Apple Cat on it.
Yeah.
That is few
Not only
layers
that,
deep.
but it has the expansion
Oh, it
box.
has the expansion box. Okay, that is a new piece of this trivia. Okay.
So that's the bingo card you keep below your normal bingo card.
Yeah, because we've looked at this picture like 20 times on this show, but
Right.
I've never noticed the expansion box on the back.
Enhance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's that.
But before you even think about
Yeah. Yes. Oh, so this Carrington's reading the card on the top of this. It says important. Before you even think of doing anything else, read this. It's a Apple documentation.
It's pretty threatening.
Yeah.
It's a little aggro.
More than probably the usual Apple documentation. But so what this is a it's new old stock Apple IIgs system upgrade for the Apple IIe.
Oh, like where you would have a 2E and the motherboard replacement in the back of it or something?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What's now known as a Stealth GS.
Yep.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard that term.
So it's got it's basically what you do with it is you take out your 2E motherboard, you put in the 2GS motherboard.
And you shake it all about.
Yes, right. Put your one lamp in, you take your other lamp out. Yeah. So and they give you a new base pan because the ports are different, so that like it's not going to quite line up with the 2E's ports.
Wait, so why do you get? I get why you'd have a back plate. Why do you get a bottom of it?
Because they're all one piece.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay. I understand. I get there slowly if you hold my hand. I understand.
Yeah. But so this is if you had a 2E and you didn't want to buy a whole GS, you could just buy like you could basically keep your existing keyboard, I guess.
Yeah.
I prefer my keyboard to be 4
And
inches
power
above. The worst part about the 2GS was the great ergonomics. I really like to type like this.
Right.
Let's stick with that tall 2E. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this didn't last very long because then this was sort of a transition to the 2GS, and so there aren't that many out there.
Did
There
you ever
certainly
know
aren't that many
anybody?
unused.
Have either of you ever known somebody who had one of these?
I've never seen one of these in real life. I've only seen
neither.
them in pictures. Yeah, and they also gave you a new badge, so it replaces the 2E.
Oh, you want to show off? That,
Yeah,
that
right.
makes it not stealth. Is it only a stealth one if you don't put the badge on? Is that how that works?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
Yes,
we have seen them, but we just didn't know because of the stealth.
could be. But it's kind of neat because it says Apple IIgs, but it's in like the form factor of the original Apple IIe badge, so it looks sort of weird. But it
right.
replaces. Yeah, there it is right there. So it replaces the where it says 2E. You replace it with little 2GS. And this kit was. They didn't sell very many of them. Partly, I think, because it had some weird limitations on it, like the cards are not the area of physical space for the cards is not as deep in the 2E as it is in the 2GS.
That's funny. You think
lot
it'd
of
be bigger? It's such a
yeah,
giant
well, it
case.
isn't because a lot of the longer cards in the 2E have the slope cut in the front of them so that they'll fit kind of under the keyboard.
Right.
The GS has a lot more rectangular volume inside it, so some of the longer cards won't fit in a 2E upgrade like this.
Interesting.
Yeah, so not all of your cards will work. And I think it was a first generation GS motherboard too. So I think these were ROM 0 motherboards. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so there's some limitations there as well. They had some compatibility issues with later GS software, so they were kind of not a great thing, but certainly
Watching the video of the unboxing, like that box has serious 80s cred. The way it's yellowed, the tape, all of that. My goodness.
Yeah, this particular auction item is pretty neat. I mean, these are rare as it is. I've certainly never seen new old stock in original shipping packaging like this. This is pretty wild.
Yeah.
So it's at $520 now, and it ends in 6 days. So it's going to go for a bunch.
Yeah, they'll get good money for that for sure.
Yeah. But quite cool.
I mean, this is unlike those other auctions that we just looked at. If you're an Apple II collector, this is a serious item. Like you want a 2GS upgrade in your collection if you're a serious Apple II collector, because it is such an interesting artifact of the period, and they're not very common. And it is actually something you could do neat stuff with it. Like you can fire it up and you can run, a 2GS software on your 2E looking thing. Like it is a very cool thing. And this is a spectacular example of one of them. So this will go for real money.
Yeah. Maybe I will watch it and see how much it goes for. I'm not participating.
No? Do you have one of these or not?
I do not. No.
Paul, how can you resist?
Space.
The thing is, it really appeals to me as a minimalist because you only want to have so many things, and therefore you could have that classic 2E look, but have the 2GS, which will let you run all the 2E software anyway. This is a pretty sweet device if you were only going to have the one Apple II. Plus, it's crazy rare and collectible and fun and different, and I dig it. I say let's all outbid Paul.
I think we're all going to get outbid. I mean, there's still 6 days left. It's already at $520.
Yeah.
Like most of the action will be in the last, couple hours. So yeah.
Imagine how much more it'd be if it was painted like that blue and
like
stripes.
that.
Yeah, if it had stripes painted on it. Yeah.
It'd go even faster. That'd be pretty hardcore.
Yeah. No, this is a pretty sweet auction, that thing.
Well, good luck with your bidding, Paul.
Thank you. The same seller has a box of blank discs, and the thing that's interesting about this is that it is an Apple. It's an old Apple, still sealed box of blank
Wow,
disc
still
2 discs.
sealed. Yeah, these are the original Apple branded disc 2 discs. Wow.
Yeah.
Still sealed.
Yeah. So that's
Who is this person who has these crazy cool items?
Jack S. I don't know who that is. The seller's name. Yeah.
Say it quickly though.
Yeah, that is a neat item. That is really cool. I had one of these. I think the dealer gave us one when we bought our Apple II. Like, here, have a blank disc, and it was like the
I
official
think
Apple
so
II
too.
disc.
I think the same with me. I think I had one of these actual Apple branded discs.
Yeah, but they were like 4 times the price of like the 3M.
So
or
who would
the
have bought
whatever.
them and then not opened them?
Yeah.
I mean,
Who's Mr. Moneybags?
This
Held on to
has
this
got to
thing.
be like dealer overstock or something, like
Yeah.
computer dealer that closed and had all that stuff in his attic or something.
yeah, I think that's got to be what happened. But and with something like this, I mean, these are the sorts of things where if you get it, like, you don't open it, because I mean, like, what's
Oh,
amazing
yes, I
about
would.
it is that it lasted this long, not being opened. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it would feel really weird to just open and use it and, like,
I'd
whatever.
open it.
Yeah.
I'd smell that 80s air. I'd open it in
Yeah.
a heartbeat. It wouldn't last 24 hours in my place.
Yeah, excellent.
I will destroy all the collectibles that all of you love.
Okay, let's see. What else should I talk about? I'll talk about this one.
Yeah, talk about it.
This is the very rare vintage Grundy Business Business Systems New Brain computer. It is the Grundy
We've
New
talked
Brain.
about the new
have.
brain before, right?
Yeah,
Have we?
Yeah.
it's come up just. I mean, just it's got the greatest name, the Grundy New Brain.
Right, and it was a Sinclair thing or something, or originally it was
think-
going to be a Sinclair. Or
I think it actually. Let's see. Well, let's find out. Since I had the Wikipedia article open anyway.
oh yeah, okay.
But it's contemporary with them, with the ZX80 and the BBC Micro. But I think it's an independent thing.
Okay,
So, let's see. Originally,
but is it
developed-
similar?
no,
Is it
no,
a
right.
Z80 machine or?
Originally developed at Sinclair.
Yeah, I know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I just don't sound like I know what I'm talking about.
But it says higher up that this Grundy was an independent company, so it sounds like they worked with Sinclair to design this thing.
Okay.
But it was released by Grundy Business Systems Limited of
They went to
Cambridge.
Sinclair and said, "We hear you know all about keyboards. Guide us." Clive said, "I'll tell you. They'll tell you the future of keyboards. It's membranes, baby."
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like a minor player in that same kind of space.
But it's got that name.
It's the name. Yeah.
It's the
I
new
mean,
brain. Come on, that name.
So it's got like a one-line display on it, but
That's all you need.
it also has a video port that displays like 256 by 256 graphics on a television.
Yep.
So that's kind of neat.
Sort
Sort of like
flying on that chiclet keyboard, you just want more space to type.
yeah. Well, it's like the Nintendo Switch of the 70s because you can use it on its own little screen, but also you can plug it into a TV and get a big screen.
The Switch is the new brain of the
Yeah.
modern era.
That's right.
That's right. There actually were two new brains. One was this AD one that had the display, and then you could also get one that didn't have the display. So the only thing that you had to plug it into a television. But
Okay, so I just looked it up and it was sold between 82 and 83 only, and it sold 50,000 units. That's crazy. I guess everything sold back then.
yeah,
That's a surprising number. Yeah. Wow.
particularly given how few I've seen. I mean, like, this is one I absolutely, if it were not, like, this is being sold for $850 or best offer. I mean, like, it's I don't want one that badly, but I would like to be able to say, like, here, check out, this is the Grundy New Brain, over there. But I don't want to, like, I would have one just to be able to tell someone, look at the Grundy New Brain. but
That sounds like a
wouldn't
phrase
spend
I'd
that much.
use. Paul shows up with, look at the Grundy New Brain who just walked in.
I mean, you got to question the source of that number, though, too. Like 50,000 of these were sold. Well, says who? Like,
Well, but the
says
thing is, it could have been that these were massive in educational in Greece or something like that. Were just everyone was like, yeah, they were everywhere. Everyone had a New Brain.
it's possible, but I think it's also equally likely that that number is nonsense that was made up by the company at the time in some quarterly report, because
Oh, right.
companies make up those numbers all the time. And then that number has just propagated its way into the Wikipedia page. But I'm skeptical of something that none of us have ever seen or heard before ever somehow sold 50,000 units. Like, that's an enormous number for an 82 computer, especially in the British market, where the British market was a lot smaller because the computers were expensive. Not a lot of people, bought them. Yeah, I don't know. Color me skeptical.
Like Sam Coupe.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
They keep trying to convince us these things existed, and I don't.
But they were in the British market. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, so it does say they were sold to scientific and industry and small business sectors. So, okay, maybe there was some niche somewhere where it was briefly popular.
Yeah, but they counted it in Grundy numbers. So
yeah, 50,000. Yeah, I don't buy that number. Show me your sources.
Grundy.
Yeah.
Citation needed.
So, kind of going along with the similar sort of form factor, here's a Timex Sinclair 1000.
Yes,
Go
that
ahead.
I remember. That I remember. See, this is what I think Carrington is remembering, because the keyboard does look thin from above. Like,
And probably at the time, because I wasn't used to small things, I have a vague memory of it being really tiny.
Yeah, I mean, it
I
was
remember
tiny,
using it
and the
for like a
keyboard
weekend.
does feel thin, especially when you see it from a certain angle. So,
But I swear the thing I had was white. I really think there was some sort of Canadian knockoff that was white. Such a clear memory. But also, I don't remember like anything. What grade was I in? Like, I don't know.
yeah, memory is terrible.
I am
have
such an unreliable
yeah,
narrator
I have
of my own
extremely
life.
vivid memories of things that I now know are factually wrong, that I would swear in a court of law happened, or that I saw and never existed. Yeah, memory is terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Who are you people again? What are we doing? How did I get here? Where's my pills?
So I guess the thing that's kind of interesting about this particular, like, the reason I brought this up is just that it has the box. It's a pretty beat up box. But
Like it says, it has like 9/10 of the box.
yeah,
It's missing a whole side.
It's missing a side. Yeah.
Somebody was really excited and just ripped it open.
I do kind of like this little, like, graduated red to black that they used on their packaging for the Timex Sinclair 1000. But so you get a little bit of that. I mean, partly what's attractive about this is that it's right now got no bids, and its first bid is $15. So I mean, like, that's I'd say that's in the right ballpark. You could buy it now for 48, and that's right at the edge of the ballpark. But yeah, I like the box.
Yeah, if you don't have one and you want one, this would be a good buy, because it is neat to have, like, the cover art, as it were. You could just cut the front of what's left of the box off and just, like, frame it on the wall. It'd be kind of a neat, like, piece of art. And it's got the original 80s styrofoam, which is also kind of neat.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know if you can see it in this photo, but I know that the problem with the styrofoam, it like fuses to the wires. Like, if you have actual, like, wires inside 80 styrofoam and you take it out, then a lot of the styrofoam is still on the wire, and it's quite, I don't know, whatever. It's annoying. It's kind of anyway, whatever.
80s styrofoam was definitely different. Like, I recently, sorry to say to Commodore people, took a Commodore printer to the e-waste. It was the CPS 1200.
That's where
I
you
think.
normally get them.
Yeah, and it was a really nice thing. It was all in the original packaging and everything. Like, it was flawless. But it's been in my basement for 2 years, and I'm never going to do anything with it. And it was taking up space, so I had just decided to get rid of it. But I had to take it out of the box because the e-waste people don't want the packaging. And so it had the original 80 styrofoam in it, and 80 styrofoam is different. Like, it's different than
Made
modern
out of
stuff.
cocaine.
Yeah, exactly. It's all the cocaine and neon. But I don't know. It feels different. Like the composition of it is noticeably different. I don't know what it is, but they've
Was it at
definitely.
the time, or is that just how it's become? Does it feel different now?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it's changed over time or if the original composition was different. I don't know, but it definitely is different now.
It's the only thing from the 80s in electronics that hasn't yellowed.
Yeah. Well, there was certainly, I would believe that it was more like it was more pure expanded polystyrene back in the day, and now it's more like, because they mix in cornstarch and PLA and stuff with this stuff now to make it more biodegradable and cost less and so on. So I'm willing to bet the 80s stuff is more just pure nasty chemicals and less so nowadays.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what else. Continuing, I guess, with the form factor.
Here's the Jupiter Ace.
Jupiter Ace. Check your bingo cards. It's been a while since we've had that row.
Yeah. I forget. I think I mostly just put this in here because I had these other things of this size. This particular one is being sold for $1,400 or best offer, and that's a lot. But that's a lot. That's a lot.
It's just a lot. Come on.
Full stop. That's a lot. But I guess the question is, where are you going to get the other one that you could get for cheaper?
True, but I mean, how does any Z80 computer go for that kind of money, man? What do you do with this thing?
This is purely for the hardcore collector. It's got to be like, yeah.
And I mean, all of these things. The thing is, whatever you imagine these things as great collectible, things defining an era or whatever. But the thing is, they are really cheaply made. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean that was the point. So
yeah,
right. That was part of the appeal at the time.
Yeah, they were garbage when they were new, and they have not gotten less garbage. Now they're just rare old garbage.
Right. Exactly. So
yeah, I just looked it up. It came out in September 1982. Introductory price of $89.95. 90 pounds.
90 pounds in that back then. Even back then, like an Apple II was like $3,500 in 1981. Yeah. So that's incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this was the one. The famous thing about this one is that it's this kind of computer, this sort of form factor, but fundamentally its built-in language is Forth.
Oh, that's right. We've talked about that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
The Ace Forth thing. Yeah.
This thing is so weird.
So it would be kind of neat to have one. I think there was
Earl
a time.
He loves Forth.
Somebody was making a recreation, like a kit.
Yeah, we've talked about this somewhere on the show. I think that's the last time we talked about this because I remember the Forth conversation. Yeah, that there is a recreation of it based on a Raspberry Pi or something. And of course, there are emulators for it as well. MAME emulates it, I believe.
Okay, let's see. This one I put I captioned it, "A moment of silence for the keyboards that have been parted out."
Oh.
Oh wow.
Whatever. It's just a
someone
dumb
selling
joke.
Keycaps. Yeah.
That's it. Specifically the F keycap. But
it looks like this seller has scrapped a keyboard because they have 20 listings above here, all different single keys.
Only 20. I wonder which letters they skipped.
Yeah. Right. Each of which he's selling for almost $7 plus $5 shipping. That's a little bit like, come on.
Yeah. However, I mean, like if you did need just one key.
Yeah, that's fair. There are a lot of Apple II keyboards out there missing one key. So I guess this would be a lifesaver if you're that person. But this makes me feel dirty, though. People do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like that's a heck of a markup because you can get an old busted Apple II for $20. Go to KFest and get one for free.
Yeah.
And then part out the keyboard for what's going to be almost $600, $700 here by the time you're done selling each key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting question about the the rules of the garage giveaway at Kansas Fest are, of course, like it's not supposed to just show up on eBay.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it shows up in 100 different little pieces,
yeah, exactly.
How do you know?
Yeah, it's the reverse keyboard of Theseus.
Yeah.
That joke was for Mark. I know he's watching.
Yeah.
Funny joke.
Just maybe somewhat related to this, I guess. This auction is for new Apple II memory configuration blocks, 16K, and so I guess the thing that's maybe somewhat interesting about these is that they are you might be excused for thinking that this is a RAM chip, and it is not a RAM chip.
Because it's a chip-looking thing that says 16K on it.
Yeah, and it does relate to an Apple II's RAM configuration, but all it really is it's like it connects a number of the pins on this whatever it is, however many pins that is, that it basically tells it like you have 16K of RAM here in this row. So you put these in and you put in the actual RAM chips and then you put in the 16K to say like, I've populated this row. So
it's like terminators or jumpers or something inside there.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And so if you didn't have the original Apple IIs, or at least the RAM upgrades would come with these, but you could, if you didn't have these, you can just like connect some wires and that will tell the Apple II that there's RAM here.
So this is like the early RAM doubler. You just stick in a 32 and see what happens. Ooh, it works.
Yeah, it in fact wouldn't do you no good if you didn't actually put the RAM chips in.
Yeah, it's more like the opposite. It's like the RAM limiter. It's how you tell the motherboard that there are no more RAM chips here, basically. Because the original Apple II motherboard supported 48K of RAM, but they came populated with as little as 4K, I think was the smallest config that you could buy. And so you had to have some other like dummy thing in the other RAM slots to tell the motherboard there was no more RAM there.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Last one I think I'll mention here is there is an Osborne Executive. So this is the OCC2. It is the successor to the OCC1. It's the successor to the Osborne one, and
This is the one with the big screen.
it's the one with the big screen. Yeah. So the Osborne one had a little screen. This one has a slightly less little screen.
In Osborne terms, it's the big screen.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's pretty cool. These actually don't show up all that often. So I thought it was at least sort of interesting to note.
I do not see the appeal of these things. I do not get it. Didn't get it then. I don't get it now.
I'm the opposite. I love these things. I think they're fascinating.
So weird.
It looks like it's got half height floppy drives. I think the original Osborne had full height drives in it. So this is maybe physically smaller than the original Osborne too.
Only weighs 90 pounds.
Yeah.
Because the original Osborne was huge, largely because of the size of the floppy drives.
Yeah, I think though I don't think it is actually much smaller, but it's you've got more space for other stuff underneath it.
Yeah.
So much space for activities.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's actually some front-mounted ports there. That's interesting. I wonder what those are for. Serial ports, maybe? I don't know. What would those be?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's actually possible also to put it might be another drive or a hard drive or something in there. Do I have one of these? I might. I
think that might just be storage because they always had like a little storage cubby in whatever space was left over on them.
Yeah, a little place to put your floppies next to the monitor.
Yeah, which would probably erase them, yeah. That was always the running joke of the Osborne. It's got a floppy erasing cubby.
Yeah. Right, it's sort of like, I guess, like those EEPROM erasers or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I don't have one.
Makes me want to watch the movie Brazil. Those
Yep.
monitor magnifying things. Yeah.
So Joel in the comments says it's the same size as the original Osborne. They made the screen bigger, and that took up the space that was used by the larger floppy drives. So, but the external dimensions are the same.
Okay.
So, I think
Because when you got something already so perfect, why change it?
yeah, exactly. It looks like maybe there's a vent on the front too. Is that a speaker or is that just an air vent to the right of the screen? That's not on the original Osborne either, I don't think.
Right.
So they've added a bunch of miscellaneous crap to fill up the space that was taken up by the enormous floppy drives.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
right, because the original Osborne had the drives on either side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
what I was
remember,
just
right.
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah,
check this.
right, okay.
And the screen was super tiny and the drives were massive. And the drives were basically the entire space that they had on the front.
Oh, and if I look up OCC1 on Wikipedia, I get something about genetics and chromosomes and things. Okay, Osborne.
Every acronym is very overloaded in modern life.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's right. So there was just, I think there was maybe different glove compartment space there on the.
There it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It had two floppy erasing cubbies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it had ports on the front too. Okay, I just had forgotten what that thing looked like. Boy, that screen is so
That is-
small.
Yeah, so we're looking at the Osborne one now, and it is a
that
tiny,
is
tiny screen.
so small. Is that like 3 inches? 4 inches,
If
maybe?
that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think the floppy drives are 5 inches. So yeah, that's like 3.5 inches, maybe. Wow, that is so small.
Yeah. And I know I had. I'm trying to remember where I put this, but anyway, I got one of those little Brazil Fresnel lenses on a stand, and put it in front of the Osborne one, just so you could magnify the screen a little bit. Well, it worked. But
I mean, it
in
is
fact, you
sort
could
of
buy one. Like in the olden days, like you can find ads in magazines to buy such things.
well, then. I mean, yeah, they made similar things for Game Boys because the original Game Boy screen was very small, and so you could get
I remember
magnifiers
that.
for that. Yeah. Boy, that's small. It is amazing though that is a picture tube. That there's an actual CRT in there is kind of amazing.
Yeah, with the Osborne one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I think I will leave.
Chase the tiny beam.
Yeah. I will leave my eBay auctions there. And I guess that means what? I guess that means we're actually at the point of closing discussions. So, Carrington, any closing notes?
What have I been doing retro-wise? Oh, I picked up an arcade, a arcade one at Partycade, which is the little built-in, like, thin stand-up thing that you can mount on a wall. So I want to make a new vertical arcade thing, and I thought I'd start with that as a base because it's easier. And the thing I noticed about it was I picked up the one super cheap that comes with it's the PacMan one, so it comes with 8 games, a couple different PacMan things, and they're like Dig Dug and Mappy and Galaga and Galaxy and which is nice because and it's got a vertical screen. That's kind of what I want it for. So I'm going to mod this thing and put a Raspberry Pi in there and give it. I want to have a old school vertical arcade game thing, and it comes with Xevious, and I'm like, you only have 8 games on here, and it comes with a 4-way joystick, and one of your 8 games is an 8-way joystick game. It's like the people who made this thing didn't even begin to look at how arcade games function or whatever. Like, and I just imagine all people buying this thinking, I heard Xevious was a good game. This is completely unplayable. Yes, it ships with an unplayable joystick. It's crazy. What a crazy choice as a machine. But I'm going to be gutting it, so what do I care?
I think those decisions are based largely on what games were the cheapest to get a license for, or that had expired copyrights on them or something. I think
And yet still, like, you couldn't have just picked another one that just uses a 4-way joystick. Like,
Yeah, no,
there's a lot. Yeah,
market-
bonkers. And if you don't know that it's supposed to be an 8-way joystick, then I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. Yep, it's 4-way. It doesn't work. This is one of the 8 games is unplayable. Crazy. But I'm gutting it. That'll show it. So at some point in the future, you will see an arcade thing hanging thin on the wall behind me. We'll see when that happens.
Nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
That's the goal.
How big is the screen? So it's got like an LCD screen built
Yeah, it's
into
LCD,
it?
but it's a vertical LCD screen, and it's like.
Oh, it's a good size.
Yeah, it's a good size, and so I dig it. And so I'm like, yeah, that makes an easy thing to. And it's a really thin wall mount form factor. So I like them like with a cavity under the joystick. I'm like, I could easily stick a Pi in there and make this thing usable. So that's the plan. We'll see. We'll see. That's what I got.
Excellent. Let's see. Meanwhile, I have found my post of the Fresnel lens in front of the
Oh, yeah.
Osborne.
It actually works pretty decently.
Brazil.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, it's actually not bad.
Let's see. So what are my closing notes? I don't know. I feel like there's like at this point, as we've mentioned, it's October and fall's begun, and my work schedule's gotten rougher. So there hasn't been a whole lot of stuff. I'm kind of trying to sift through my office. I found my other applesauce, so that'll help me
cool.
sift through my office. But so yeah, not a whole lot going on with me, I guess.
Oh, I forgot to mention, last weekend I was at a wedding, and not only was I the MC, I was the officiant for my nephew. And they had requested me because they said they wanted something different and funny and irreverent and memorable. And I'm like, are you sure?
And
I
they
checked
couldn't
with
get
them
anybody else.
Right? I checked with them a few times. I'm like, are you sure? I even wrote 2 versions of it. Like, are you sure you want me to just go? They're like, do it. And the nice thing is, like, they knew I was going to do that. I knew I was going to do that. All the people on my side of the family, because my nephew knew when they saw me, oh, here we go. But I think her side of the family was woefully unprepared for the way I was going to run the ceremony. So it was an interesting thing. It was great. It was fun.
They got their first exposure to full Carrington.
They did indeed. I'm up there. I'm quoting Outcast. I'm doing it as a wrestling thing. I was full on. It was great. So I did that.
Was it a Joe versus the volcano themed wedding?
No, alas. Would be if it was mine. But
It's the only thing I know about you, so I just had to bust out that fact.
I got the tattoo and all.
Wow, I didn't know you had a tattoo.
Yeah, it's my Joe vs. Volcano lightning bolt.
Nice. That's dedication to a
That is
specific
indeed.
movie from the early 90s.
Yep.
All right. Quinn, any closing notes?
Yeah, a few retro things going on. I got my Tangy pack for my Apple IIc.
Cool.
Yeah, so that just came in the mail. I haven't tried it yet as of this recording, but yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a fairly new display adapter that it has a similar form factor to the original RF modulator for the Apple IIc that clips right onto the back, so there's no external cables or anything. And it just sticks right to the back of the machine, screws onto the port basically, and then it has VGA and HDMI outs on it. So I'm thinking I might end up eventually having all of my machines with HDMI adapters on them, and all of my retro machines are sitting on one desk. So I'm thinking about just putting an HDMI screen above on the wall and then just getting everything connected to that. And then I could get rid of all the monitors, and not initially because I like the monitors, but eventually they're all going to fail or something. So I'm kind of just planning ahead for future options. So
Nice.
yeah,
the Tangy pack looks great.
yeah.
I mean, just, my gosh. What
It's nicely made, yeah. The case is 3D printed, which I'm always skeptical of because 3D print quality varies a lot, but these are really nicely printed. He's got a nice printer, and it's well set up. So the case almost looks like an injection molding. It's really nicely printed. So cool thing. And then I mentioned, I'm still playing Ultima 6 gradually, like I talked about in the last show. I've slowed down a little bit. These games are quite a time investment, but it's that game has aged really well. I have to say, it's still really fun to play. It's surprisingly modern in many of its gameplay mechanics. Like you can save anywhere, and there's a fast travel mechanic, and they've taken out a lot of the tedium that we remember from 80s RPGs, where you spent all of your time killing rats to earn 5 gold to upgrade your sword a tiny amount, and then spending 20 minutes walking between the towns and running useless errands. Like, they've optimized out a lot of that stuff already, which surprised me. I didn't expect it to be so modern. Some of the cultural aspects of it have not aged so well. Richard Garriott has some opinions about the Romani people, which have not aged well. So I won't use the G word, but all of the Romani people in this game are all thieves and prostitutes and liars and con men, and it's like, oh, Richard, I know it was the 80s, but still, that has not aged well. But no, it's fun. So I just bought a ship, and I'm sailing
Nice.
around. It's interesting to see the mechanics. I mean, I remember Ultima 4 and 5 really vividly, because those were the games that I played the most in those formative years. And it's interesting to see how the mechanics have evolved. So, the earlier Ultimas had 1 million commands, right? Literally every single letter on the keyboard was a different command. And there was a point where you felt like he was just making up commands to fill the keyboard, because there was like a command to hoist sails on a ship. And so they've gotten rid of all of that stuff in 6. So when you get in it, the sails are just always up in the ships, and it just doesn't go anywhere unless you're standing on it. Like, an obvious simplification that takes out a bunch of unnecessary commands. And it doesn't have the actual sailing mechanic that the early Ultimas did. So you could row, where you're just moving one tile at a time, or you could put the sails up and then it would take off with the wind. But then if you crash into land with the sails up, you would die. And they've taken all of that out. So you just move around with the keyboard when you're in the ship, and it's fine. It's just, the ship is just the thing that lets you cross water, and it's fine. So that's kind of a nice, simplification of a lot of stuff like that. And then they have the text highlighting in its conversations, which is really nice. It just tells you the keywords that people will respond to. So you type name and job, and then you don't have to like guess which of the nouns. You don't have to play like guess the noun in every single sentence to like squeeze all of the information out of them, because that's all you want, right? Like each character has 2 things that they have to tell you that you need, and it's just like pulling teeth to try and get the information out of them. Here it's just like it just shows every word in red that the person will respond to, and so you just type each word in red one after the other. So that's kind of nice. There's some steps backwards though too, like buying and selling gear is super tedious. When you go into a shop, they do everything through the conversation mechanic. There's no like buying and selling interface. So like shout out to Nox Archaeus for having improved that in Ultima games. When you go into a store to buy and sell gear, there's a special interface that has like your stuff on one side and the store's stuff on the other, and you can just transfer stuff back and forth, and it buys and sells and transfers all the money and whatever. In this, you have to actually talk to the person and be like, I would like to buy armor. And then the guy's like, I have these kinds of armor. Which kind would you like? And it's like, I would like this kind. And like, which character would like this kind? And it's
the worst part of a store in real world is the having to talk to people.
Yeah. And like, if you go into a store to sell like the 17 leather helms that you picked up running around killing monsters, like it takes like 20 minutes of talking to the shopkeeper one by one to sell each of these items. Like, so that's kind of stupid. So there's some of that, but in general, it's surprisingly efficient. But yeah, so I'm enjoying it. I don't think
I'm glad you're liking it though. It's been so many years.
Yeah.
So I'm
it's
happy with that.
It's pleasantly surprising how much it's held up. I think it's going to be a fairly short game. I doubt I will finish it, which I'm fine with. But I think it's surprisingly short because I'm about halfway through what I think is one of the main quest like plot story lines, which is, and I've only been playing for a couple of hours total, so which I like. Games are always too long. Sort of retro related. I was working in the video game industry when the first modern Prince of Persia game came out, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, and which was an absolutely phenomenal game. First new game under that IP since the 80s, and it got a lot of bad press because it was only 6 hours long. And then everybody played it and they were like, oh, this is great. Like a 6-hour game. Like I actually get to see the end of it. And all the busy adults were like, this is the greatest idea ever. Why aren't all games 6 hours long? Like I do not need 100 hours of gameplay. I have a life. So this is, I think, probably going to come in somewhere around 20, 30 hours, which for an RPG is pretty low. So I'm pretty happy about that. I might have some chance of maybe seeing the end of it, although I doubt it. But yeah, so thoroughly enjoying that.
Cool.
Got more work done on my retro room downstairs. I got speaking of Ultima, I showed you guys in the Discord. I hung all of the cloth maps on the wall.
Which is such a great idea. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Turns out I have them all. I didn't know. I have this Ultima 6 box in my closet for decades, literally decades. I've been carting that box around. I think I got it from a friend. It's not my original copy, but it turns out, it had all the maps in it, including Ultima Online and the paper map of Underworld that came with Online, and the cloth maps for 1 through 6. So they're all hanging on the wall, doing that
fantastic
retro thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my retro life since we recorded last.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. I guess we have made it to the end, so that is it for this show. You can find the show notes for this and all the RCR shows at rcrpodcast.com. You can find lo-fi episodes and more via Gopher at rcrpodcast.com. You can if you follow the recordings on YouTube, you can see everybody dance as I say this, and if you're listening, you can hear the swishing sounds of the dancing happening as well.
Occasional microphone thumps.
Yes. You can, where were we? I think you can discuss the episodes in the forums at forum.vcfed.org/something. You can follow RCR on Mastodon at podcast.social at RCR Podcast. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/RCR Podcast. You can send feedback to feedback@rcrpodcast.com, and at some point we may read it out. And please write a review on iTunes if you wish. Allegedly, that will help people find the show. And until next time,
Retro compute.
cool. Whatever that fan sound was.
Yeah, it just came back.
Just came back.
Yeah.
It's some reaction to your dancing, I guess.
Could be I got fans.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a small chance it's me here. I'm going to mute and tell me if it goes away.
Nope.
It's got to be me because I don't hear anything.
No, okay. It's my furnace.
It's
is
got to be
currently running.
something's touching something.
Well, Carrington, what happens if you mute your StreamYard?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's you.
That was it.
Oh, it's me.
It's definitely you.
Touching. I don't know.
Grab
Yeah,
something
well.
here.
It was only for part of the show, and so it's the kind of noise that can be removed in
Yeah,
Audacity.
it's Paul's problem.
Yeah,
Fix and
exactly.
burst.
Yeah. That is a nice new lamp. I like it.
I like it too.
Where'd you get it?
Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, good find.
Somebody in Hamilton posted it, and I'm like, that is for me. And they wanted $20 or something. I'm like, yes,
Oh,
now.
wow.
And I drove in
Yeah.
and got it. And he goes, there's been like 900 people inquire about this. And I'm like, well, it's a cool looking lamp.
Yeah.
Which is so rare because the things that I like, nobody ever wants. So, but it turns out other people liked it because of the giant. If I stand near it, it's like, it comes up to here on me. It's this giant. I love it. I don't know what I'll do if I ever break that lampshade. Where does one get a 4-foot lampshade? But
Yeah, that's.
Right.
It looks designery. It looks like that's maybe designed by someone famous or something. It's got that kind of look. to it.
more likely a knockoff, I think. But sure.
Yeah, surely. Yeah,
but
surely.
but I dig it.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
I did. I'll make myself large here just to. I have the daisy wheel
Oh,
accessory print. Lisa daisy wheel printer accessory kit.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
whatever.
that's an artifact.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. I mean, I don't have any of the relevant pieces. Or at least I don't. I have. Yeah.
What's actually in it? Is it like the cable or something, or like what are the accessories for the Lisa daisy wheel printer?
The accessories that I have, well, I mean, so there is a list of things that's supposed to be on it. So it is supposed to have a power cord, print wheel, ribbon, some stuff like that. None of these things I have. Serial interface cable, modem eliminator cable. So I have the paper stuff, but that's it.
Oh, so it's just the empty box for the kit?
Well, it's an empty box and then like various paper things, but it's not the hardware.
Okay, this is getting.
Not a lot of kit in your kit.
Yeah,
That's true, but it's still
You
it's
got to
quite
put together.
possible
It's a
that.
kit.
How many of these do you think there are? I mean,
In your house, 5.
That's.
because
We're getting a window into Paul's mind here.
Right.
yeah,
I bought a cardboard box because there aren't many of them.
yeah.
Um,
Well, this was in the garage giveaway, so it was a.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Particularly, I mean, it cost whatever it cost to
Yeah.
travel to Illinois, but
Fair enough. So if you bought a daisy wheel printer for your Lisa, this box was in the main box and it just had the cables and stuff in it. Is that
yeah,
what
I
this
think
was?
so.
Okay.
Because the daisy wheel printer could the printer itself was somewhat platform agnostic, so you could get it for your 2 year, 3 year.
Oh,
whatever.
I see. So they swapped out the inner box
Yeah.
for the cables and stuff. I see. Okay, gotcha.
So you and the other 6 Lisa users all want to have that box.
Yeah, well, I don't have the daisy wheel printer either. That is a
Well,
thing.
there's not 6 other users for Lisa.
So it's a box and papers for a thing you don't even have.
Yeah,
This is amazing.
right, I think that was the point of bringing it up before, right? That
Yeah,
it was
okay.
like a super rare thing that existed, but for a very small number of people.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm glad you didn't pay money for it.
Herb in the chat is saying that I grabbed a nice Super Drive box, which is true actually. Yeah, I guess there was. I know what Herb is talking about. At the 2019 Kansas Fest, there was a. I mean, these boxes.
5 years ago, Herb, let it go.
It's sort of like, I mean, we were just saying this about like the ZX80 or whatever. They were cheap things. This is a brown box. It's. I think it's the brown one. It's just a shipping box. It has a little design on it that shows what it is. It says Apple. But the thing is that it's for a rare object, and so anyway, Herb says I got the nice one, and he got the not so nice one. So sorry, Herb. I didn't know
You
that we
knew.
were competing for this, but okay.
Now I'm imagining Paul just like shoving Herb out of the way, like climbing over his injured
I
body
cannot imagine Paul
to get
doing
to
that.
the slightly nicer Super Drive.
I imagine Paul being the
box.
politest person at the garage giveaway. That's what I imagine.
Yeah, no. At this point with the space issues, I mostly just wait and see what's left over at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
don't
this
know,
was
Karen,
left over. Nobody went for the Daisy Wheel Lisa accessory box.
Sure. Look, you don't get surrounded by a perfect sphere of rare equipment by
Oh,
being
that's
nice.
true.
So
Right. I must be projecting.
yeah, he seems like a nice guy, but when
then-
that bell rings for the garage giveaway, it's
Those
just
Lisa
it's just-
items are there
It's
calling you.
elbows and he's just like a Tasmanian devil of all the empty boxes for weird things are gone.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I do look forward to being. I want to go to Kansas Fest in person. I think I'm
I would like to
prepared for that
too.
again. Yeah.
I think maybe this year might be the year.
I think so too. I'm thinking,
back.
or this year. Yeah, I think this might be this next one.
Yeah.
Go to
Yeah.
the new location.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that too.
A lot kind of depends on what you guys do politically. So
Yeah,
whether I want to go over the border, but we'll see. So,
much will be decided in the next 6 weeks.
yeah.
Yep. What was I going to say? Oh, I don't know if Jeremy's still here, but Jeremy was in the chat and he was at Kansas Fest with Elisa that
Nice.
Oh,
he
cool.
got started up. So
He's probably written 5 or 6 games during
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah. Yeah, he wrote 6 games for
He's
it,
just
yeah.
knocking out software right now.
Was it a 2 or a 1?
2. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Still, that's really cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen Elisa one. I've
Yeah, the
seen
ones are
pictures of-
obscenely rare, right? Yeah, like they're crazy value. They're like Apple One valuable almost.
Yeah. Same reason too. Like the Apple said, we'll give you a better one if you just give us the old one. So
Right. Yeah.
Who doesn't do that?
Someone in our group, is it John Leake? Someone has a Elisa One with the Twiggy drive in it,
Wow.
or it might have been Tony Diaz. Someone in the K-Fest group has
Wouldn't
one.
be surprised if Tony did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tony,
I don't remember
I'm pretty
who.
sure he did.
Right.
He would have,
Okay.
yeah.
That might be who I'm thinking of.
Which means someone has it now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
who knows what happened to it then? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I suppose we probably should go. It's been the recording's been going for almost 2.5 hours. So
Yes.
Time for the next show. Let's go.
Yep. All right. Thanks everybody though in the chat for joining
Absolutely.
Oh, we're still on YouTube. How about that? Oops.
us. Yeah.
Glad
I
we
will-
all just talk politely by default.
Yeah, I hope I didn't say anything terrible in the last 5 minutes. I just assumed we were off streaming.
Sorry about that. But we will soon be off stream. Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.